Good evening, Night Owls, and welcome to Midnight Reddit Tales. The world outside is quiet, and we're back with some of the most captivating stories Reddit has to offer. As always, if you enjoy spending your late nights with us, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and settle in. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's get straight to the stories.
Story 1.
When Mark and I first told his parents we were pregnant, I swear his mother Carol levitated. His father Frank, who normally showed all the emotion of a granite countertop, actually cracked a smile. We were in their beige on beige living room, the one with the pristine white carpet no one was allowed to walk on with shoes. A boy Carol clapped her bracelets, jangling. "Oh, Frank, our first grandson, a little Peter." I felt Mark's hand tighten on my knee. We had discussed this extensively. Actually, I started trying to keep my voice light. We were thinking about other names. Frank's smile vanished. There are no other names. The firstborn son in this family is always Peter. 7 generations. Jennifer. He said it like he was citing scripture. I know, and we respect that Mark jumped in, ever the diplomat. But Peter is difficult for Jen's family? I took a deep breath and told him the story I had told Mark on our third date. About my Uncle Peter, my mom's vibrant, life-of-the-party younger brother. How he died in a car accident when he was just 19. How my grandmother found him. How on her deathbed, years later, she made my mother promise that no one in our family would ever be named Peter again, that she couldn't bear to hear that name attached to anyone but her lost son. My grandmother is still alive, I finished softly. It would break her heart. To my shock, Carol's face softened. She reached across the coffee table and patted my hand. "Oh, you poor dear." "Of course. Family is family. We'll make an exception. This one time..." Frank just grunted, but he didn't argue. I felt a tidal wave of relief. They understood. For 6 months they did. They bought us a crib, sent us articles on sleep training, and called Mark every other day for belly updates. The name wasn't mentioned again. We settled on Leo. Strong, simple, and ours. Then at 34 weeks pregnant, I got the call. My grandmother had passed away in her sleep. Peaceful, the doctor said. I was devastated. She was the last of my grandparents, the anchor of my family. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and hushed condolences. Carol and Frank came. They hugged me, brought a casserole, and said all the right things. 2 days later, Carol called. "Just checking in, sweetie," she said. "Now, I know this is a difficult time, but..." Frank and I were talking about the baby's name. My stomach went cold. "What about it?" "Well, with your grandmother gone, God rest her soul, there's really no reason not to honor our family's tradition now, is there? The obligation is lifted." I was speechless. She was using my grandmother's death as a loophole. Carol, the promise to my grandmother doesn't die with her. The pain of what happened to my uncle doesn't just disappear. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Jennifer," she said, her voice turning sharp. "This is about honoring our family's legacy. A legacy your son will be a part of. We'll be calling him Peter." "No," I said, my voice shaking. "You won't. His name is going to be Leo." I hung up. The pressure campaign started that night. Text from Frank about duty and heritage. Daily calls from Carol alternating between syrupy guilt trips and outright demands. They told Mark I was being selfish, that I was letting a ghost from the past rob their grandson of his birthright. They were relentless. It was a miserable final month of pregnancy. Leo was born on a Tuesday morning, 10 pounds of fury and perfection. We were exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely in love. Mark sent a picture to his parents with the announcement, "Leo has arrived. Mom and baby are doing great." The reply came from Frank. "Unacceptable. You have dishonored this family." They didn't visit. They didn't even call. For 2 months, we were in a bubble of bliss and baby-related chaos, but a dark cloud hung over it all. Mark was torn up, angry at his parents, but miserable without them. I was consumed by a toxic mix of rage and guilt. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Frank standing on our porch alone, holding a thick manila envelope. "Mark here?" he asked, not meeting my eye. "He's at the store." I held Leo closer, blocking the doorway. "Fine." He thrust the envelope at me. "Here. For the baby." I opened it. It was full of cash. Stacks of hundreds. My heart hammered against my ribs. "What is this?" $10,000, he said, his voice flat. "That should be enough to cover the legal fees and whatever else. Go to the courthouse tomorrow, file the paperwork, and change his name to Peter. We can forget this whole ugly business." I stared at him at the money, then back at his stony face. He wasn't bribing me. He was trying to buy my son's identity. "Get out of my house," I whispered. He just turned and walked away. When Mark got home, I told him everything. He saw the envelope on the counter and his face went white with fury. That was the last straw for him. The silence from their end became absolute. Then about 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Carol sobbing. "I can't do this anymore, Jennifer," she cried. "I'm so sorry. I just want to see my grandson. Please." Frank is sorry too. We were wrong. We just want to be in his life. Mark and I were skeptical, but the thought of Leo growing up without his grandparents was painful. We cautiously agreed to a visit. They showed up with a mountain of gifts, cooing over Leo and telling us how perfect he was. They apologized again, tears in their eyes. For 3 weeks, it was like a dream. They came over constantly, helping with laundry, letting us nap, playing with the baby. Things felt normal, repaired. But I noticed something odd. They never said his name. Not once. It was always the little guy, sweetheart, my handsome grandson. I pointed it out to Mark, but he waved it off. "They're trying, Jen. It's probably just a hard habit to break. Give him some time." I tried to believe him. I wanted to believe him. This afternoon, I took Leo to the park. It was a gorgeous day, and he was finally old enough to enjoy being outside. As I was settling him into the swing, I saw Carol walking up the path. "Fancy meeting you here," she chirped, her smile huge. She scooped Leo out of the swing and gave him a smothering kiss. "I was just getting some fresh air," I said, forcing a smile back. "He loves watching the dogs." Carol started parading him around the playground, showing him off like a trophy. She fell into conversation with another woman, a grandmother with her own toddler in tow. I hung back, pulling my phone out to snap a picture of them. The woman gestured to Leo. "Oh, he's just beautiful." "What's his name?" I zoomed in with my phone's camera, ready to capture the moment. Through the speaker, I heard Carol's bright, proud voice clear as a bell. "This is Peter." The world narrowed to the sound of that single impossible word. Asterisk Peter. Asterix. My phone clattered from my numb fingers onto the wood chips. The picture I took was a blurry shot of the ground. For a second, I couldn't breathe. It was like being plunged into ice water. The bright, sunny park, the laughter of other kids, it all faded into a dull roar. Carol didn't notice. She was still beaming at the other woman, bouncing my son in her arms. "My son, Leo!" I walked toward them, my steps feeling strange and disconnected on the soft ground. The other grandmother must have seen the look on my face because her smile faltered. She muttered a quick goodbye and hustled her own toddler toward the slide. "Carol," I said. My voice came out low and tight. "Jennifer, isn't this fun? He just loves the fresh air." She kissed his cheek, oblivious. "What did you call him?" Her smile froze in place, becoming a brittle mask. "What are you talking about, dear?" "I heard you. You introduced my son to that woman as Peter." She let out a nervous little laugh. Oh, silly me. A slip of the tongue, with the family tradition and all, it's just on my mind. It was the lie that did it. The casual, condescending way she tried to brush me off as if I were a hysterical child. I saw the whole 3 weeks for what they were, a long con. A campaign to slowly erase the child we had and replace him with the one they wanted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply reached out and took my son from her arms, holding him tight against my chest. He smelled like baby powder and sunshine. We're leaving, I said. I turned and walked away, not looking back. I could feel her eyes on me, hot with shock and indignation. I didn't care. I strapped Leo into his car seat, my hands shaking so badly I fumbled with the buckle 3 times. Once we were on the road, I pulled over, my heart hammering against my ribs, and called Mark. She called him Peter, I said the second he answered. There was no preamble. She introduced him to a complete stranger as Peter. Silence. Then a low sound from Mark, like the growl of an animal. Where are you? On my way home. Good, he said, his voice hard as flint. I'm leaving work. I'll meet you there. This ends tonight. When I got home, Mark's car was already in the driveway. He met me at the door, his face a thundercloud. He took Leo from my arms and just held him, looking from my face to our son's. I'm so sorry, Jen, he whispered. I wanted to believe they'd changed. So did I. I said, my throat thick. He put Leo in his bassinet and pulled out his phone. He didn't hesitate. Mom. Dad. You need to come over to our house, right now. He listened for a moment, his jaw tight. No, it can't wait. Get here. They arrived 20 minutes later, all smiles and faint concern. Carol came through the door first, holding a Tupperware container. I brought that lemon loaf you like, sweetie. Mark blocked the entryway, his arms crossed. He didn't move to let them in further. We need to talk. Frank grunted, stepping up beside his wife. What's this all about? We were in the middle of dinner. Jen took Leo to the park today, Mark started, his voice dangerously calm. She ran into you, Mom. Carol's face went pale. Yes, it was a lovely surprise. She heard you talking to another woman. She heard what you called your grandson. Carol clutched her purse. I already explained to Jennifer. It was a slip of the tongue, an accident. Was it an accident? Mark's voice rose. Or is that what you've been calling him this whole time, behind our backs? This time it was Frank who answered. He took a step forward, his expression one of pure defiance. We call him by his rightful name. The name he should have been given. The confession hung in the air, sickening and absolute. They weren't sorry. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Carol nodded, finding her courage in her husband's arrogance. It's a matter of respect for this family's history. Something Jennifer clearly doesn't understand. We're just correcting her mistake. In private, of course. I felt a laugh bubble up, bitter and incredulous. Correcting my mistake? You've been lying to our faces for weeks. You pretended to accept our son, but you were just waiting for a chance to erase his name, to erase our choice? It was a selfish choice, Carol snapped, her voice finally losing its syrupy sweetness and turning sharp as broken glass. You are denying him his heritage over some silly sentimental nonsense for a dead woman. That was it. That was the line. I saw something in Mark break. The last thread of hope of filial duty just snapped. He pointed to the door. Get out. Frank scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, son. We're your parents. No, Mark said, his voice shaking with a rage I'd never heard from him before. You are the people who tried to bribe us. You are the people who ignored us for 2 months. And now you are the people who have systematically disrespected my wife and my son in our own home. You are not welcome here. Get out of my house. Now." He took a step toward them, and for the first time, I saw my father-in-law flinch. Carol grabbed Frank's arm, her face a mask of fury, and pulled him toward the door. She threw the container of lemon loaf onto our porch as she left. It popped open, spilling cake onto the welcome mat. Mark slammed the door behind them and locked it. The silence that followed was deafening. He leaned his forehead against the door, his shoulders heaving. I went to him, wrapping my arms around him from behind. We stood like that for a long time. The anger slowly drained out of me, and in its place, something else settled. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't sadness. It was peace. The heavy, suffocating weight I'd been carrying for months, the guilt that I was the one tearing this family apart, was just gone. I hadn't done this. My grief hadn't done this. My promise to my grandmother hadn't done this. They had. Their obsession, their entitlement, their profound disrespect. Mark finally turned around, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. They will not see him again. I know, I said. Not until they can look him in the eye, call him Leo, and apologize to you for what they've done. I nodded, my heart swelling with love for this man. And if they never can? He walked over to the bassinet and looked down at our sleeping son. He gently stroked Leo's soft cheek with the back of his finger. Then they will never know him, he said, his voice firm with a finality that was absolute. And that will be their loss, not ours. He was right. Our revenge wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be quiet. It would be the sound of Leo's laughter in a house they were not welcome in. It would be every birthday, every holiday, every milestone they would miss, all because they couldn't offer our son the most basic fundamental respect of using his own name. They had chosen a ghost over their grandson. And now they would be ghosts to him.
Story 2.
I remember the exact shade of paint we argued over for the living room. Seacliff Gray, Liam had called it. I'd wanted something warmer, but he'd insisted gray was more timeless. He talked about our future like that, a solid, well-planned thing built on timeless foundations. We had the apartment, the shared Netflix account, and Gus, our goofy golden retriever who loved Liam just a little bit more. We were a unit. And us. The crack started with a name, Heather. Heather from work is hilarious, he'd say, phone glowing in his lap as we watched TV. She gets my sense of humor. Oh yeah, what's so funny? I'd ask, trying to nudge Gus off my side of the couch. Just work stuff. He wouldn't get it. She was his work wife, a term I've since decided should be grounds for immediate termination. He swore it was platonic. A joke. Just someone to survive the corporate grind with. I tried to believe him. I really did. I invited her to my birthday drinks. She was mousy and quiet, clinging to Liam's side and offering me a polite, tight-lipped smile that never reached her eyes. She seemed harmless. A beige-colored person. 2 months later, Liam came home from work and wouldn't look at me. He just stood in the doorway of our Seacliff Gray living room, his shoulders slumped. I can't do this anymore, he said to the floor. Do what? Work late? Because I can order pizza. I was trying to make it easy for him to smooth over whatever rough day he'd had. No Clara. Asterisk. This asterisk. He finally looked at me and his eyes were hollow. Us. I can still feel the air leaving my lungs. It was a physical punch. What are you talking about? We were just looking at vacation spots last night. I know. I'm sorry. His excuses were a waterfall of cliches. He felt trapped. He needed to find himself. He wasn't the man I deserved. It was all polished, rehearsed bullshit. He'd already packed a bag. It was in his car. He took nothing but his clothes and his PlayStation. He didn't even fight me for Gus. That should have been the biggest red flag of all. The next 3 months were a blur of takeout containers, tear-soaked pillows, and obsessive social media stalking. His accounts were locked down tight. Nothing. I was a ghost, haunting a life I no longer had access to. My friends tried. They brought wine and ice cream and told me I was better off, but their words felt like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. The confirmation came on a Tuesday. A mutual friend from Liam's office, probably drunk on post-work margaritas and guilt, sent me a single, unsolicited screenshot. It was a photo from Heather's Instagram, which was public. Liam and Heather grinning, arms wrapped around each other in front of the Eiffel Tower. The caption, 6 months with my favorite person. He makes Paris even more magical. The picture was posted yesterday. 6 months. I did the math, my fingers shaking. He had been with her for 2 full months before he even bothered to break my heart. Our entire last vacation, our final I love yous, the fight over the damn gray paint, it was all a lie. He wasn't finding himself. He had already found someone else. That screenshot broke me. But it also lit a fire. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone, puffy eyes, unwashed hair, Liam's old sweatshirt hanging off me. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. And in that moment I decided I never wanted to see her again. The next day I booked my first therapy session. Dr. Anya was a no-nonsense woman who told me to feel the anger instead of drowning in the sadness. So I did. I got angry at Liam. At Heather. At myself for being so blind. I started journaling, filling notebooks with furious, jagged letters. I ran until my lungs burned. I lifted weights until my arms shook, turning the phantom weight in my chest into something I could physically conquer. My best friend Sarah dragged me on a backpacking trip through the Sierras. On the third day, after a brutal 8-hour hike, I stood on a granite peak watching the sun dip below the mountains, and I felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger. Just the wind on my face and the solid ground beneath my feet. It was the first time I'd felt peace in almost a year. I came back different. Stronger. I started saying yes to things. Yes to after-work drinks. Yes to that cooking class I'd always wanted to take. Yes to Sarah setting me up on a blind date. He's a firefighter, Clara. A literal, real-life hero who saves cats from trees. You can't say no. I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Okay, fine. One date. His name was Ben. He was tall with kind eyes and a smile that crinkled at the corners. He picked a trendy little Italian place downtown with low lighting and amazing pasta. The conversation was easy. He talked about his job, the crazy calls, the camaraderie at the firehouse. He asked about my marketing work, about Gus, about my backpacking trip. He actually listened. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't scanning the room. His attention was entirely on me. For the first time in over a year, I felt that little spark. The flutter of possibility. I was in the middle of telling him a ridiculous story about Gus stealing a whole rotisserie chicken off the counter, my hands gesturing wildly, my head thrown back in a laugh. He was laughing with me, his eyes bright and focused. It was perfect. It was easy. It was everything my relationship with Liam wasn't at the end. And that's when I heard it. A laugh from across the room. A wheezing, familiar cackle that sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. My smile froze. My blood went cold. I slowly, reluctantly turned my head toward the sound. And there he was. Sitting 2 tables away, crammed into a booth that seemed far too small for him, was Liam. But it wasn't the Liam I remembered. The man who used to meticulously track his macros and spend hours at the gym was gone. In his place was a doughy, bloated stranger. His face was puffy, his neck lost in the tight collar of a wrinkled polo shirt that strained across a prominent gut. He looked soft. Unhappy. unrecognizably fat. And across from him, picking at a salad with pursed lips, was Heather. She was still beige, but now it was a faded, washed-out beige. The magical Paris glow from her Instagram post had evidently worn off, replaced by the flat, unforgiving light of a Tuesday night in a pasta restaurant. My own laugh died in my throat. Every muscle in my body tensed, a primal fight-or-flight instinct kicking in. For a split second, the floor dropped out from under me and I was back in that Seacliff Gray living room, the air thick with his bullshit excuses. Then Dr. Anya's voice echoed in my head as clear as if she were sitting next to me. Asterisk. You are not that person anymore. You are here. Now. Be here. Now. Asterisk. I took a sharp, silent breath. I blinked once, forcing the ghost of the past away. I turned back to the man in front of me. The real man. Sorry, I said, my smile returning, feeling only a little brittle at the edges. You were saying Gus and the chicken. Ben was still grinning, completely oblivious. Yeah, so did you ever get it back from him? Are you kidding? By the time I caught him, he'd inhaled the whole thing. There was nothing left but a crime scene of bones and regret. Mostly my regret. He laughed. A deep, genuine sound that warmed the space between us. A dog of action. I respect that. I kept my eyes locked on his. I listened intently as he told me a story about a rookie at the firehouse who tried to cook a frozen pizza without taking the cardboard off the bottom. I laughed until my stomach hurt. I felt his knee brush against mine under the table, and I didn't pull away. I was here. I was present. I was on a fantastic date with a handsome, funny man who saved people for a living. But I'm only human. I snuck a glance. Liam had seen me. His fork was frozen halfway to his mouth. The color had drained from his already pallid face, leaving it a pasty gray. His eyes were wide with a look I knew all too well, the cornered, panicked expression of a man who's been caught. He stared at me, at my smile at Ben, laughing across from me. He looked from my fitted black dress to his own strange shirt buttons. I could practically see the gears grinding in his head, the pathetic, frantic calculations. Heather, noticing his sudden paralysis, followed his gaze. Her mousy face tightened. Her eyes, small and hard, swept over me with a flicker of pure venom before she looked away, her posture rigid. She said something to Liam, a short, sharp whisper. He didn't answer. He just lowered his fork, his appetite clearly gone. For the rest of their meal, they didn't speak. They sat in a thick, miserable silence, pushing food around their plates. Liam kept stealing glances, each one more fraught than the last. Heather just stared at her pasta, her jaw clenched. They looked like two strangers forced to share a table at a bus station. Our own conversation, meanwhile, flowed like wine. Ben and I talked about everything and nothing bad, movies, dream vacations, the best place to get a burrito in the city. He paid the bill, insisting over my protests. You can get the next one, he said, and the unspoken promise of a second date hung in the air, sparkling and full of potential. As we stood to leave, I knew this was the moment of truth. To get to the exit, they would have to walk directly past our table. My heart gave a little thump, a final echo of the old fear. I took a steadying breath. Ben put a light hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the aisle. Just as he did, Liam and Heather were getting up. Their timing was hideously perfect. Liam saw us, saw Ben's hand on my back, and he flinched as if he'd been slapped. He quickly looked at the floor, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He shuffled past his gaze, fixed on his own feet, a man desperately trying to become invisible. Heather trailed behind him, her head held high in a show of defiant pride, but the bitter set of her mouth gave it all away. She refused to look at me. I didn't look at them either. As they passed, I turned my head slightly, smiled up at Ben, and said, "That story about the cat in the vending machine is legitimately the funniest thing I've ever heard." I felt their presence pass by like a cold draft, and then they were gone. I didn't turn to watch them go. Ben walked me to my car, the cool night air feeling clean and fresh. Under the warm glow of a streetlight, he stopped. "I had a really great time tonight, Clara," he said, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "Me too," I said, and I meant it more than I'd meant anything in a long time. He leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't a firework exploding movie scene kiss. It was better. It was gentle and sure and warm, a kiss that felt like a beginning. When I got home, Gus greeted me at the door, his tail thumping a frantic rhythm against the wall. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and knelt to bury my face in his soft, familiar fur. Leaning against the doorframe, I thought about Liam. I had spent months fantasizing about this moment, playing out 100 different scenarios in my head. I'd be in a killer dress. I'd say something witty and devastating. I'd make him see exactly what he'd lost. But the reality was so much quieter and so much more satisfying. I felt no vengeful thrill, no surge of triumphant rage. There was no anger left to fuel it. All I felt was a strange, distant pity. Pity for the man who had traded a life we were building for that. For silent, miserable dinners. And a body that looked as unhappy as his eyes. He hadn't just left me. He had left himself. He'd given up. I looked around my own apartment, at the warm colors I'd chosen, at the framed photos of my friends on my backpacking trip of Gus. My life was full and vibrant. My life was my own. He hadn't broken me. He had freed me. And as I hung up my keys, I realized the ultimate revenge wasn't making him miserable. It was being happy without him.
Story 3.
The login screen glowed in the dark of my tiny apartment. Sally Mae. The two words that had been a monster under my bed for the last 6 years. I typed in my password, my heart thumping a stupid, frantic rhythm against my ribs. The number popped up on the screen. To $843.17. That was it. The last of it. The final soul-crushing payment on a mountain of debt I'd been chipping away at since my first day in an ambulance. 6 years of ramen, of secondhand scrubs, of saying no to vacations and yes to every overtime shift offered. In 3 days, my next paycheck would hit and that number would become a beautiful, glorious 0. For the first time in my adult life, I was about to have breathing room. An extra $1,000 a month that wasn't earmarked for a past I was trying to outrun. I could replace my couch, which had a suspicious spring that jabbed you in the thigh if you sat on it wrong. I could take a trip somewhere that didn't involve a gurney. I could just be. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, rattling against a water glass. Asterisk. Mom. Asterisk. I stared at the screen, the joy draining out of me like blood from a bad wound. I knew I shouldn't answer. It was after 10, which meant she was home from her shift at the diner, her feet were aching and her mind was spinning. Nothing good ever came from a post 10 p.m. Call from Mom. I answered anyway. Hey, Mom. Chloe, you awake? Her voice was thin, frayed at the edges. Just got in. Long shift. Always a long shift for you, she said. It wasn't a compliment. I was just thinking about Becca. Of course she was. She was always thinking about Becca. My sister, the golden child, currently residing in the state penitentiary for women. My parents, formerly a mid-level manager and a dental hygienist, with a 401k and a paid-off mortgage, were now a part-time stalker at a big box hardware store and a waitress who reeked of stale coffee and fryer. Oil. All for Becca. All because when Becca showed up on their doorstep panicked and covered in someone else's blood, they didn't call the police. They helped her clean up. They lied. Accessory after the fact. Obstruction of justice. They got 2 years, Becca got 10. They lost their jobs, their pensions, their house. They got out 6 months ago and moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment over a laundromat. And they got slapped with court fines so high they might as well have been a life sentence. Aunt Carol called Mom, continued her voice, dropping into the conspiratorial whisper she used when talking about Becca as if the parole officers were listening through the phone lines. She spoke with Becca's lawyer. He said she's doing okay. Taking a pottery class? That's nice, I said, my voice flat. Pottery? Of course. Becca was probably sculpting the perfect clay-based alibi. It's not nice, Chloe. It's hell, Mom snapped. We can't talk to her. We can't write to her. We can't even see her. Not one visit until those fines are paid. The lawyer said we might get a waiver for phone calls if we show significant progress on the payment plan. There it was. The topic that had become the background music to my life for the past 6 months. The fines. The money. The only thing standing between my parents and their precious imprisoned daughter. I know, Mom. It's a tough situation. A tough situation, she scoffed. Your father's back is thrown out from lifting boxes of patio furniture, and my tips tonight barely covered gas money. This isn't tough, Chloe. This is impossible. A heavy silence hung between us. I knew what she was doing. I could feel the hook being baited. I just stared at the $843.17 on my laptop screen. My number. My freedom. I have to get to bed, Mom. Early start tomorrow. Of course, she said, her voice dripping with manufactured martyrdom. Get your rest. The next Saturday, I made my obligatory weekly visit. Their apartment was suffocating. The air was thick with the smell of my dad's off-brand cigarettes and something vaguely like burnt toast. The walls were covered in pictures of Becca. Becca at her prom. Becca at her graduation. Becca on a beach, laughing her hair golden in the sun. There was one small framed photo of me on the bookshelf, a picture from my paramedic academy graduation, tucked behind a porcelain angel Becca made in 3rd grade. I was a supporting character in the story of my own family. Dad was in his recliner, a heating pad draped over his lower back, watching a game show. He grunted a hello. Mom was at the small kitchen table, a pile of envelopes, and a calculator in front of her. Look at this, she said, not as a greeting, but as a command. She shoved a piece of paper in my face. It was a notice from the county court. The balance was obscene. 5 figures. The monthly payment due was more than their rent. They just don't stop, do they, she said, her hand shaking slightly. It's a shakedown. It's the sentence, Mom, I said, setting my purse down. It's a leash, Dad grumbled from his chair. A way to keep punishing us. To keep us from our daughter. I just nodded and started making coffee, my usual Saturday ritual. It was easier than talking. As I filled the pot with water, I watched my mother's eyes drift to my purse. A nice one, a designer knockoff I'd bought myself as a little "you're almost there" gift. Then her eyes flicked over to me, up and down, taking in my clean scrubs, my sturdy work boots, my newish-looking jacket. That's a nice coat, she said. Her voice was too casual. Must have cost a bit. It was on sale, I lied. Over coffee, the questions started. They were subtle at first. Little jabs disguised as chit-chat. Did you guys get that raise the union was talking about, Dad asked, not taking his eyes off the TV. It's still in negotiations, I said. Heard on the news that paramedics can make 6 figures with enough overtime, Mom added, stirring her coffee so hard it sloshed over the rim of her mug. Is that right? If you never sleep, I said, my stomach tightening. They knew. They had to know. They'd watched me work 60-hour weeks for years. They'd heard me complain about the debt. They must have been counting down the days right along with me, but for a very different reason. My finish line was their starting block. The next week, the pressure cranked up. Text from Mom in the middle of my shift, a picture of another court notice with a sad face emoji. A late night call from Dad, his voice thick with cheap whiskey, rambling about how he saw a girl who looked just like Becca at the store, and it nearly broke his heart. I was at their place again, dropping off groceries I knew they couldn't afford when I saw it. Mom was on the couch, pretending to be asleep, but her laptop was open on the coffee table. The screen was lit up. It was my bank's homepage. She must have seen me looking at it on my phone once and memorized the name. She hadn't gotten in, of course, but she'd been trying. She was trying to see my balance. My blood ran cold. They weren't just dropping hints anymore. They were doing reconnaissance. They were calculating. My extra $1,000 a month wasn't just a fantasy about a new couch. To them, it was a line item in their budget. It was their significant progress on the Becca Fund. I left the groceries on the counter and walked out without saying a word. The silence lasted for 3 days. It was a tense, heavy, quiet that felt louder than their usual nagging. I knew they were planning something. A summit. A final appeal. On Wednesday, my last day before the direct deposit that would change everything, my phone rang. It was Dad. His voice was different. No whining, no guilt. Just a flat, serious tone I hadn't heard since before the arrest. "Chloe," he said. "Your mother and I need to see you tonight. Come for dinner." "I'm kind of tired, Dad. It's not a request," he said, cutting me off. The words were quiet, but they hit me like a slap. "We've been talking. We have a solution." The drive over was short, but my stomach twisted itself into a series of increasingly complicated knots. A solution. My parents didn't find solutions. They created problems and then expected me to manage the fallout. I walked up the rickety stairs to their apartment, the air already smelling like stale desperation and burnt onions. They were sitting at the kitchen table side by side, facing the door like an execution squad. My dad had put on a collared shirt and my mom had a printed out spreadsheet next to her coffee cup. This was an ambush meticulously planned. "Sit down, Chloe," my mother said, gesturing to the empty chair opposite them. I didn't. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. It was a small act of defiance, but it was all I had. My dad cleared his throat. "We know things have been tense." He began the words, sounding rehearsed. "And we know we've put a lot of pressure on you. So we made a plan." Mom cut in, tapping the spreadsheet. She was the numbers person. "A family plan. We've done the math. Based on your paramedic salary minus your rent, utilities, and a generous estimate for groceries and gas, and factoring in the conclusion of your student loan payments." She took a breath, her eyes glinting. "You'll have a surplus of approximately $1,050 a month, starting this Friday." I felt my blood run cold. She had calculated my life down to the dollar. "The minimum payment on our fines is $750. She continued, sliding the paper across the table towards me. "If you give us $800 a month, we can cover that and have a little left over to show the parole board we're making significant progress. In a few months, maybe 6, they'll grant the waiver for phone calls. We'll be able to hear Becca's voice again." Her voice cracked on Becca's name. It was the kill shot. The guilt bomb she'd been perfecting my entire life. My father just nodded along his face, set in grim agreement. This was it. The solution. I was the solution. My future, my breathing room, my one goddamn new couch was their ticket back to their golden girl. They looked at me, their expressions a mixture of hope and stern expectation. They weren't asking. They were informing me of my new financial obligations. I stared at the spreadsheet at the neat little columns that laid out my life for their consumption. I thought of the extra shifts, the meals I'd skipped, the times I'd glued the sole of my boot back on because I couldn't afford a new pair. All of it leading to this moment where the fruits of my labor were being claimed like a tax. I looked up from the paper and met my mother's eyes. No, I said. The word hung in the tiny kitchen, seeming to suck all the air out of the room. My father flinched as if I'd slapped him. My mother's face just blanked. What, she whispered. No, I repeated. My voice was quiet, but it felt like the loudest sound I'd ever made. I'm not giving you my money. Chloe, maybe you didn't understand, Dad started. I understood perfectly, I said, cutting him off. You want $800 a month? The answer is no. My mother's face twisted from shock into a mask of pure rage. No, just no. After everything we've done for you? What have you done for me? The question was out before I could stop it. You mean besides mortgaging your house to pay for Becca's first lawyer, or draining your retirement to pay for her second, or getting yourselves thrown in prison for her? What part of that was for me? We are your times, parents' times, she shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. The coffee cups jumped. We kept a roof over your head. We fed you. That's the bare minimum, I shot back, my own voice rising. That's the job description. You don't get a Lifetime Achievement Award for not letting your kids starve. This is about family, my dad said, his voice a low growl. This is about helping your sister. Don't you have any loyalty, any heart? She is rotting in there and we can't even talk to her. Your refusal is cruel. It's selfish. Selfish, I laughed a sharp, ugly sound. I've worked 60-hour weeks for 6 years to get out of a hole. You want me to jump right back into another one that you and Becca dug and you call times, me, times selfish. My money is mine. I earned it. I bled for it. It's just money, Chloe, Mom cried, tears of frustration streaming down her face now. It's paper. This is about our daughter, your sister. You would choose a new couch over letting me hear my baby's voice. Yes, I said. The word was cold and hard in my mouth. Yes, I would. Because it's not about the couch. It's about the fact that you see my life, my work, my entire future as nothing more than a resource for you to get back to her. I grabbed my purse from the counter. I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. You are a disappointment, my father said, his voice flat and dead. A cold, ungrateful disappointment. I didn't look back. I walked out the door, his words chasing me down the stairs. The direct deposit hit my account 2 days later. The balance was higher than I'd ever seen it. I immediately logged into the Sallie Mae site and made the final payment. $843.17. Gone. A pop-up window appeared with digital confetti. Asterisk. Congratulations, you've successfully paid off your loan. Asterisk. I felt nothing. No joy. No relief. Just a hollow ache in my chest. The silence from my parents was absolute. For 4 days, my phone didn't ring. My message notifications were silent. It was a heavy, vindictive quiet. Then on the 5th day, the text started. Not conversations. Just commands. A text from Mom Times, you need to fix this. Asterisk. The next day from Dad Times, your sister deserves better. Asterisk. Then another from Mom, a single gut-wrenching photo of Becca from her high school graduation, smiling in her cap and gown. Underneath at Times, don't you remember this girl? Asterisk. I started leaving my phone on silent. The guilt was a physical thing, a weight in my stomach that made it hard to eat. I'd be in the back of the ambulance doing chest compressions on a stranger, and my dad's voice would echo in my head. Asterisk. A cold, ungrateful disappointment. Asterisk. Were they right? Was I sacrificing my family for a few $100 extra? But then the anger would come roaring back. The image of that spreadsheet. The cold, calculated way they had portioned out my life for their own ends. They hadn't asked for help. They had levied a tax. Tonight I'm sitting on my couch, the one with the bad spring, staring at my banking app. The money is just sitting there. My money. I could book a flight. I could put a down payment on a decent car. I could do anything. But I feel paralyzed. I close the app and open a web browser. My fingers move on their own, typing into the search bar. I find a forum, a place where strangers pass judgment on the anonymous confessions of others. I start to type. Asterisk. Am I an idiot for refusing to pay my criminal parents' court fine so they can talk to my felon sister? Asterisk. I stop and look at the words on the screen. It hits me then, a realization so sharp and clear, it feels like a physical blow. They weren't asking for help to rebuild their lives. They weren't asking for money for rent or food. They wanted me to buy back their access to the child they actually valued. They didn't see me, their responsible, law-abiding paramedic daughter. They just saw a walking, talking ATM. The key to unlocking the Becca vault. And my one refusal had shown me I was never really part of the family at all. I was just the funding.
Story 4.
My mother, an artist to her core, saw life as a canvas. Her final project wasn't paint and clay. It was us. Her children. She'd named my siblings and me with a deliberate, almost obsessive poetry: Liam, Olivia, Violet. L-O-V. She died before she could complete her masterpiece, before she could find her E. You finish it for me, baby, she'd whispered, her hand a skeletal weight on my swollen belly. Her eyes clouded with morphine still held that creative fire. Find the E. It has to be one of mine. A grandchild. My blood. A promise made in a sterile beeping room is a promise etched in stone. So when I found out I was having a girl, it felt like destiny. A sign from Mom. The legacy would be safe. I was 6 months along when my sister Liv called. Her voice was tight, a wire pulled taut. Are you sitting down? She asked. Liv, I'm perpetually sitting down. What's wrong? I rubbed a hand over my stomach, a subconscious gesture of protection. Dad and Bethany are having a baby. The air left my lungs in a silent rush. Dad. And Bethany. My mother's nurse. The woman he'd been sleeping with while Mom's masterpiece of a life was fading to gray in the next room. They'd gotten married 6 months after the funeral, a move so grotesque it felt like a slap. Oh was all I could manage. My throat closed up. When? She's about 4 months along. Just announced it on Facebook. Liv's sigh was pure static. That's not the worst part, Clara. I waited. The silence stretched, filled with the hum of my refrigerator and the frantic thumping of my own heart. They're planning on naming it with an E name, Liv finally spit out. To complete Mom's legacy and honor her memory. The phone felt slick in my hand. I gripped it tighter. They what? You heard me. Bethany posted this whole saccharine novel about how she always admired Mom's artistry and wants to give Dad the gift of completing her LOVE vision. A hot, acidic wave of rage surged up my throat. Bethany, who used to bring my mother lukewarm tea and steal my father's glances over the sickbed. Bethany, who wore a pair of my mother's earrings to the wedding. Asterisk. That times Bethany was going to honor my mother. It's a performance, Clara, the whole thing. She's trying to erase Mom. He can't, I said, my voice shaking. He can't let her do that. Mom told me. She told me times. I times had to do it. One of us. Her blood. Try telling him that. I did. He said it's beautiful that all 4 LOVE children will be siblings all in the same generation. He said it's what Mom would have wanted. Mom would have set his car on fire, I snapped. Liv let out a bitter laugh. You know it. I know it. But Dad's living in some fantasy land where his affair was a tragic romance, and Bethany is his reward for being a grieving widower. My apartment, usually a sunny, hopeful space filled with baby gear and half-finished nursery projects, suddenly felt like a cage. The little stuffed elephant on the rocking chair seemed to be mocking me. This wasn't just about a name anymore. It was a heist. They were stealing my mother's final wish, twisting it into a monument for their own tawdry affair. She's not family. Clara Liv's voice was low and fierce. She's the woman who sat in our kitchen drinking our coffee, while Mom was upstairs forgetting our names. Don't you let her take this. I won't. The words were a vow. Later that day, a text message lit up my phone. It was from Bethany. My thumbs hovered over the screen, trembling with a mixture of anger and dread. Asterisk, Clara honey. Just heard the most wonderful news from your dad that you're having a girl too. Isn't it a sign? 2 new little angels to heal our family. I know how much you wanted to use an E name for your mom, but I hope you understand why it's so important for your father that this baby, his child, completes the set. It would mean the world to him. We can find another beautiful name for your little one together. Maybe one that honors me. Let's be a family again. Asterisk. The winky face emoji was a digital shiv to the ribs. Asterisk. Honors me times. The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't just stealing the name. She was asking me to hand it over with a smile and thank her for the privilege. This wasn't about honoring Mom. This was about replacing her. Staking a claim, Bethany wasn't just marrying my father. She was trying to colonize our family history, planting her flag right on top of my mother's grave. I screenshotted the text and sent it to Liv without comment. Her reply was instantaneous. Asterisk. That manipulative witch. Asterisk. Followed by asterisk. What are you going to do, asterisk? I stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen. My face was pale, my eyes hard. The promise I made to my mother echoed in my head, no longer a whisper, but a battle cry. This wasn't a request. It was her last will and testament. I pushed myself off the couch, my movements stiff with resolve. I grabbed my purse, my keys. The casual tone, the winking emoji, the disingenuous plea for unity, it all clicked into place. This was a declaration of war. And she had underestimated her enemy. I had to see him. I had to look my father in the eye and make him understand what he was about to destroy. The engine was off, but my hands were still clenched around the steering wheel, knuckles white. I was parked across the street from my mother's house. My house. Now it was just his house. Bethany's house. Through the big picture window, the one Mom always filled with stained glass birds she'd made, I could see the flat, sterile glow of a television. I didn't call first. I just walked up the stone path, my key sliding into the lock with a familiar grating sound. They didn't even change the locks. The sheer arrogance of it. They were on the couch, my dad's arm slung around Bethany's shoulders. She was wearing one of his old flannel shirts, a detail so domestically cloying it made my teeth ache. They both looked up, startled. Clara, my dad said, getting to his feet. What are you doing here? You should have called. This is still my house, isn't it? I asked, my voice flat. I looked at Bethany, whose hand had gone instinctively to her own small, neat bump. I got your text. The one with the winky face. Bethany flushed a blotchy, unattractive red. I was just trying to reach out. To smooth things over. There's nothing to smooth, I said, turning my full attention to my father. You know what Mom asked me to do? You were in the room. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, a gesture of exasperation I'd known my whole life. Clara, don't be dramatic. We talked about this. It's a beautiful tribute. All 4 of them, siblings. It's poetic. It's a lie. I shot back the words like stones in my mouth. Mom's poetry was about time's bloodline, her children and her children's children, not her replacements. The word replacement hung in the air. Dad flinched. Bethany, however, saw her opening. She stood up her face, a carefully constructed mask of gentle concern. Clara, I know this is hard for you, she began, her voice dripping with faux empathy. I loved your mother too. I admired her so much. All I want is to honor her and make your father happy. I know she would want him to be happy. She took a step towards me. Please don't take this from him. Let him have this one thing. It would help him heal. That was it. The breaking point. The disingenuous plea. Using my mother's memory as a shield for her own conquest. A hot white rage, pure and clean, sliced through my grief. You don't get to say her name, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. And you don't get to decide what she would have wanted. You're the nurse who slept with a patient's husband. That's all you'll ever be in this story. My father's face went dark. That's enough, Clara. Apologize to Bethany. No. I looked from his face to hers, this woman who was colonizing my life. And I felt nothing but the cold certainty of a general before a battle. I'm not giving you the name. It's mine. It was promised to me. I turned and walked out, not waiting for a response. The lock clicking shut behind me sounded like a starting pistol. 2 weeks later, Liv called breathless. You are not going to believe this. Try me. I was folding a tiny onesie in my back, protesting with every movement. Aunt Carol. You know how she talks to everyone. She was on the phone with Dad's sister, and apparently Bethany had her big 20-week scan. Liv paused for dramatic effect. It's a girl. I stopped folding. What? Yup. They were so sure it was a boy. Dad had been telling everyone they were going with Elliot. They're scrambling now. They don't have a girl's name picked out. A slow, audacious smile spread across my face. My own due date was a ticking clock just over 2 weeks away. But they were back at square one. It was a gift. An opening. My mother, from wherever she was, had just handed me a tactical advantage. They just lost their head start, I murmured. What was that, Liv asked. Nothing. Hey, Liv, I think I'm having a contraction. My daughter was born 36 hours later, a furious, beautiful little thing with a full head of dark hair just like my mom's. She arrived in a whirlwind 2 weeks early as if she knew she was on a deadline. When the nurse came in with the paperwork, I didn't hesitate. I wrote her name in firm, clear letters, my hand steady for the first time in months. Elise. Lova. I texted a picture to a group chat with my dad and Liv. Just the photo, no caption. My tiny girl swaddled in a hospital blanket. Complete. Liv's reply was a string of heart emojis. My father's came 10 minutes later. It was a private message. Asterisk. How could you? You did this on purpose. You stole this from your mother, from all of us. You took her beautiful legacy and made it about your own petty, childish anger. Asterisk. The words were meant to hurt, to curdle my joy. But looking at Elise sleeping on my chest, I felt a profound sense of peace. I hadn't stolen anything. I had reclaimed what was ours. I'd kept my promise. The real fallout began the next day. Aunts and uncles from my dad's side started texting, calling me selfish, disrespectful, a witch who couldn't stand to see her father happy. I ignored them all. Then, Bethany went public. She posted a black and white, artfully filtered photo of her ultrasound print. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive warfare. Asterisk. Sometimes the most beautiful art takes a little longer to finish. We've been blessed with a little girl, and we've decided to take our time to find the perfect name to complete a very special family legacy. Patience is a virtue. The real E-Baby is on her way to bring our family the healing it deserves. Number 4 is love. Number family legacy. Number honoring her memory. Asterisk. The comment section was a cesspool. Sympathy poured in for the poor grieving widower and his angelic new wife whose beautiful tribute had been sabotaged by a bitter, jealous daughter. People who had known me my entire life were liking the post, leaving comments about how disappointed my mother would be in me. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Liv was sending me screenshots, her own furious comments lost in the sycophantic flood. It was a coordinated attack, a public shaming. They were rewriting the narrative, painting me as the villain who had desecrated her own mother's memory. I sat in the dim light of the nursery, the blue glow of my phone illuminating Elisa's sleeping face. The stress was a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The victory felt hollow, the peace shattered. Was it worth it? Was this vicious public war worth a name on a birth certificate? My daughter stirred her tiny hand wrapping around my finger. Her grip was surprisingly strong. I looked down at her at this perfect final piece of my mother's masterpiece. This wasn't just a name. This was a promise. This was Mom's last stand. And she'd chosen me as her soldier. Bethany's post was still open on my screen. Asterisk. The real E-Baby is on her way. Asterisk. A cold, hard resolve settled in my bones, replacing the anxiety. They wanted a war, fine. They had forgotten one crucial detail. My mother wasn't just an artist. She was a fighter. And I was without a doubt her daughter.
Story 5.
I love my lawn. That probably sounds pathetic, but it's the truth. It's my one patch of zen in a world of conference calls and toddler tantrums. It's green, it's thick, it's meticulously edged. My 2 kids, a 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl, tumble on it like it's a safety mat. It's my pride. Or at least it was. The problem lives in my basement. My mother-in-law, Carol. She moved in 3 years ago after her husband passed. The deal was simple. She gets the basement suite rent-free, and in return she helps with the kids while my wife and I work. On paper, it's a perfect arrangement. In reality, it's a slow-motion demolition of my property and my sanity. The first incident was the cedars. I planted a row of them along the back fence 5 years ago. They'd finally grown into a beautiful, dense privacy screen. One Saturday I came out to find them sculpted. She'd taken shears to them, carving them into these bizarre, lumpy poodle shapes. They needed some style, she'd announced, beaming. I just stared, speechless. My lush natural wall was gone, replaced by something you'd see at a Tim Burton-themed mini-golf course. My wife, Sarah, just shrugged. She's trying to help Terry. It's not a big deal. The next year, it was the hedge. We have a massive laurel hedge separating our property from the neighbors. It's a beast to maintain, but it's worth it. Carol decided the path to the side gate was too long. It required walking an extra 15 feet around the hedge. So she took a saw and hacked a tunnel straight through the middle of it. A jagged, ugly wound right in the heart of a 30-year-old plant. When I confronted her, she looked at me like I was insane. It's more efficient, she said, as if that explained everything. The hedge never recovered. It's still got a big brown dead patch that screams shortcut. Sarah's response, Mom's getting older, it's easier for her. Let it go. But the real masterpiece, the project that set the stage for this year's disaster, was the Great Garden Heist. I had a small decorative perennial garden near the back patio. Nothing fancy, just some hostas, black-eyed Susans, a few lavender plants. It was my little spot of color. I came home from a business trip to find it gone. Every single plant had been ripped out and tossed in the compost. In its place were 3 rows of tomato stakes and some wilting lettuce. Carol had decided my flower garden was a waste of good sun. She needed more room for her vegetables. I lost it. I yelled. I asked her what gave her the right to just tear up my yard. She just folded her arms. We need fresh tomatoes, not useless flowers. Sarah pulled me inside. She's contributing. She's growing food for our family. You're getting upset over a few weeds. They weren't weeds. They were my plants in my garden in my yard. But to Sarah, I was the bad guy for not appreciating her mother's contribution. I was outnumbered. I dropped it. The tomatoes were mediocre. That was last summer. I spent the whole winter stewing, but also hoping. Maybe, just maybe, she had finally run out of things to destroy. Then the first warm Saturday of spring arrived. The snow had melted, the air was crisp. I was practically vibrating with excitement. Time to get the yard back in shape. I pulled the cover off the mower, checked the oil, filled the gas. My son Leo was buzzing around me. Can I help Daddy? You bet, buddy. You can be my supervisor. I pulled the cord. The engine roared to life. It was the best sound in the world. I started on the first pass along the back of the house. A long, satisfying stripe of freshly cut grass appearing behind me. It felt good. It felt right. As I rounded the corner of the patio, the engine sputtered. Then came a sound that made my blood run cold. Asterisk. Crunch. Screech. Whomp. Asterisk. A shower of sparks flew out from under the mower deck. The engine died with a shudder. I froze, my hands tingling from the vibration. Son of a bitch, I muttered. I tilted the mower on its side. The blade which I had just sharpened last fall was a disaster. A huge, jagged chunk was missing from the cutting edge, the metal warped and bent. Something had annihilated it. I looked down at the lawn to see what I'd hit, and that's when I saw it. It was a ramp. A crude, ugly ramp made of dirt and gravel leading from the lawn up to the 2-inch lip of the concrete patio. It was about 3 feet wide and packed down hard. The grass underneath my perfect green grass was a dead yellow smear. Loose gravel was scattered all over the surrounding lawn, a minefield of blade-destroying rocks. My son's little red ride-on car was parked at the top of it. I knelt down and poked the ramp. It wasn't just dirt. It was compacted like concrete. She must have spent hours piling it on, tamping it down, watering it into a solid mass. All so Leo could drive his plastic car onto the patio without navigating a 2-inch bump. A bump he could have easily bypassed by just driving 10 feet to the left, where the patio meets the walkway at ground level. Rage hot and pure washed over me. This wasn't helping. This was malicious. It was a flag planted in the middle of my sanctuary, a declaration that nothing I owned was truly mine. I spent the next 4 hours in a silent fury. I got a shovel and a wheelbarrow. The ramp didn't want to give up. I had to hack at it, breaking up the concrete like soil chunk by chunk. Underneath the ground was a soulless, compacted wasteland. I shoveled the whole mess out, raked the area until my back screamed, picking out every last piece of gravel by hand. Then I went to the garage, got the bags of topsoil and grass seed I'd bought for spring overseeding, and carefully rebuilt the patch. I leveled it, seeded it, fertilized it, and watered it gently. By the time the sun started to dip, it was done. A perfect dark brown rectangle of fresh soil sat where the ramp had been. Order was restored. I stood there leaning on the rake, exhausted but satisfied. I had taken back my lawn. I heard the basement door slide open behind me. I didn't turn around. I just kept admiring my work. The footsteps stopped a few feet away. "What did you do?" Carol's voice was sharp accusatory. I took a deep breath, then slowly turned to face her. Her arms were crossed, her face a mask of indignation. "I fixed it," I said, keeping my voice level. "You ruined it," she snapped. "That was for Leo. He needs his ramp. You're going to build it back, right now." I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and brittle, the noise a man makes when he's reached the absolute end of his rope. "Build it back," I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "Carol, you destroyed my lawnmower. You spent hours compacting soil over my grass, killing it for a problem that didn't exist." "Leo couldn't get his car up," she insisted, jabbing a finger toward the patio. My composure snapped. I marched over to the little red plastic car, grabbed it by its steering wheel, and dragged it off the patio. I pushed it across the grass for 10 feet, to where the concrete walkway meets the patio flush with the ground. Then with one hand, I easily rolled it onto the concrete. I turned back to her, spreading my arms. "See? Problem solved. No destruction necessary. This took me 5 seconds. Your ramp took you hours and cost me a $100 mower blade and a patch of my lawn." Her face went from indignant to thunderous. She didn't see logic. She saw defiance. She saw me undoing her work. She gave a disgusted ch sound, spun on her heel, and stormed back to the basement, slamming the sliding door so hard the glass rattled. I knew what was coming next. I had about 90 seconds. I was still standing there, hands on my hips, breathing hard, when the back door of the house opened. Sarah stepped out, phone pressed to her ear. She was listening, her expression hardening with every word Carol poured into her head. She hung up and fixed me with a glare that could melt steel. "What is wrong with you?" she asked, her voice laced with ice. "What's wrong with times meet times? Sarah, look at this." I gestured at the fresh patch of soil, the scattered gravel. I hadn't managed to find the deep gouge in the lawn where the mower had died. "She built a damn construction project on our lawn. She broke my mower." "My mother was building something for our son," she said, walking toward me. "She was trying to be helpful, and you just tore it down and screamed at her." I didn't scream. I shot back, my voice rising. I showed her the perfectly good path that already exists. This was needless destruction, Sarah. Just like the cedars, just like the hedge, just like my flower garden. When does it stop? When does this become my time's house again? It's her house, too. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, dumbfounded. What? She lives in the basement. We own the house. I pay the mortgage. I maintain the yard. And she provides full-time childcare, so we don't have to pay a fortune for daycare, Sarah shot back. That gives her a say. This is her home, not just a room you let her use. She has the right to feel comfortable here. She has the right to do projects. I felt a dizzying sense of unreality. We were standing in the middle of the yard I spent every weekend caring for, and my wife was telling me her mother had the right to demolish it at will. A say is, "Hey Terry, I think it would be nice if we built a little ramp for Leo." Not taking a shovel and gravel and unilaterally deciding to pave over the lawn, she doesn't have the right to destroy our property. Sarah. Then she said it. The sentence that vaporized whatever ground I thought I was standing on. She crossed her arms, mirroring her mother perfectly, and said with chilling finality, "She has the right to do whatever she wants to our property. She lives here." I just stared. I had nothing. No response. No argument. The logic was so warped, so completely insane that I couldn't even begin to formulate a reply. It was like arguing with someone who insisted the sky was green. My wife, my partner, the person who was supposed to be in my corner, was standing in front of me telling me I was a tenant in my own home. And the landlord was Carol. I turned away from her. I couldn't even look at her. I walked to the garage, grabbed a beer from the old fridge, and just sat on a stool in the silence, surrounded by the smell of cut grass and gasoline. I stayed there until the sun went down. Later that night, the house was quiet. The kids were in bed. I was in the living room pretending to watch TV. Sarah came and stood in the doorway, refusing to sit next to me. I talked to my mom, she said. Her tone wasn't conciliatory. It was the voice of a messenger. I didn't say anything. I just kept my eyes on the screen. She's very upset. She feels completely disrespected and unappreciated. She said that if you're going to criticize everything she does to try and help, then maybe you should see how you like it without her help. I muted the TV and finally looked at her. What does that mean? It means if you don't like her methods, you can watch the kids yourself, Sarah said flatly. You can pay for daycare. But she's not going to be treated like a child in her own home and get screamed at for building a ramp for her grandson. There it was, the checkmate. They had tied her free childcare, the cornerstone of our family's finances, to her absolute unquestionable right to hack, dig, and pave any part of my property she saw fit. Objecting to the destruction of my yard was now an attack on her role as a grandmother. Complaining about a broken lawnmower meant I didn't appreciate her watching our children. I felt a profound, bottomless exhaustion. This wasn't a fight I could win. I was being outmaneuvered by a united front that operated on an emotional logic I couldn't penetrate. My enemy wasn't the woman in the basement who butchered my hedges. It was the woman standing in my living room delivering ultimatums on her behalf. So, I'm just supposed to let her do whatever she wants, no boundaries, no respect for my work, my things. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You need to apologize to her, Sarah said, ignoring my question entirely. And you need to get over your obsession with a stupid lawn. It's not as important as family. She turned and walked to our bedroom without another word. I sat there in the dark, the silent television flickering. Family. This didn't feel like family. It felt like I was an outsider, a groundskeeper whose duties and opinions were irrelevant. The lawn wasn't the point. It was the only thing left that was mine, and they were taking that too. I opened my laptop. My hands were trembling slightly as I navigated to the Reddit page. Am I the asshole? I had to know. I had to ask someone outside this crazy bubble if I was the one who had lost his mind. I started to type. Am I the bad guy for getting angry at my MIL for destroying my lawn?
Story 6.
The knock on my apartment door wasn't a knock. It was a 3-thump combo, hard and impatient. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Only Gary knocked like he was trying to break the door down. I swung it open. What's up, man? And then I saw it. His head. Gary, who had this thick, almost ridiculously perfect brown hair, was completely bald. Shiny, freshly shaved, not a hint of stubble. Whoa, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Midlife crisis hit a decade early. He didn't smile. He just stared at me, his eyes intense. My Aunt Carol. She has cancer. Chemo starts next week. The joke died in my throat. Oh. Man, I'm sorry. Seriously? Yeah, he said, stepping past me into my apartment like he owned the place. He was holding a gym bag. So I did this. Solidarity, you know. He rubbed his hand over his scalp. She's gonna lose hers, so I lost mine first. That's a hell of a thing to do, Gary. She'll appreciate that. He dropped the bag on my coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. He unzipped it and pulled out a set of electric clippers. The cord wrapped neatly around the body. Your turn. I blinked. My what? Your turn, he repeated, unwinding the cord and looking for an outlet. We're doing this. Solidarity. I took a step back. Whoa, hold on. We. Mark's already on board. He's doing it tomorrow. I came here first. You're my best friend. He plugged the clippers into the wall socket by my TV. He flicked them on. The loud bzzzzzzz filled the room, a hostile, invasive sound. He flicked them off. Sit. He pointed at a kitchen chair. I held my hands up. Gary, no. I'm not doing that. His face, which had been set in this grim, determined mask, tightened. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I'm not shaving my head. I'm sorry about your aunt, I really am. I'll send flowers, I'll sign a card, whatever you need, but I'm not buzzing my hair off. Why not? He demanded, his voice getting louder. It's just hair, Brody. It grows back. It's about the gesture. I get the gesture, I said, trying to keep my own voice level. It's a great gesture for times you times to do. She's your aunt. I've never even met her. That doesn't matter, he snapped, taking a step toward me. It's about supporting me, supporting my family. And I do support you. But I like my hair, man. It took me forever to grow it out. I'm not shaving it off. The look he gave me was pure venom. He couldn't seem to process the word no. It just wasn't in his vocabulary when it came from someone else. You like your times, hair times, he said, his voice dripping with condescending disbelief. My aunt is fighting for her life, and you're worried about your stupid hair. This isn't about your aunt anymore, is it? This is about you not getting your way. Unbelievable, he scoffed, shaking his head. I came to you, my best friend, for a simple show of support, and you're too vain and selfish to do it. It's a goddamn haircut. It's my haircut. On my head, I get to decide what happens to it. You're a real piece of work, he said, yanking the plug from the wall so hard I thought it would rip out of the socket. He started shoving the clippers back into his bag, his movements jerky and violent. A real a-hole. For not wanting to shave my head, get over yourself, Gary. He zipped the bag shut and slung it over his shoulder. Don't bother sending a card, he spat, turning for the door. My family doesn't need fake support from selfish pricks. He slammed the door behind him. The whole building probably felt it. I just stood there in the middle of my living room, the phantom buzzing of the clippers still ringing in my ears. A week later, I was trying to wash the whole thing down with cheap beer. Mark's party was in full swing, the bass from the speakers vibrating through the floorboards. I'd been avoiding Gary, and he'd been avoiding me. The tension had seeped into our whole friend group, forcing everyone to pick a side in a fight that was utterly insane. Mark, for the record, had not shaved his head. He told Gary it was a family thing and he'd feel weird intruding. Gary hadn't spoken to him since. Tonight, Gary wasn't here. It was a relief. It meant I could actually relax. And I did. Maybe a little too much. I did a round of shots with some guys from work, played a few disastrous games of beer pong, and then found a corner of the kitchen to just lean and drink. Easy there, killer, Mark said, appearing next to me and grabbing the beer I was about to open. That's your fifth in an hour. You're done. I'm fine, I slurred, reaching for it. The room was starting to tilt. Yeah, you're real fine, he said, holding the beer out of my reach. Look, you're not driving home like this. The spare room upstairs is all yours. Crash here. Don't want to be a burden, I mumbled. The only burden you'll be is when I have to carry your drunk ass up the stairs. Let's go. He put an arm around my shoulder and steered me through the crowd. The music felt like it was drilling into my skull. He got me to the room, a small space with a single bed and a desk. It was quiet. Blissfully quiet. Keys, he said, holding out his hand. I fumbled in my pocket and dropped them into his palm. All right. Sleep it off, man. See you in the morning. He closed the door behind him, leaving me in the dim light filtering in from the street. I didn't even bother taking my shoes off. I just fell face first onto the mattress. The world spun for a second, and then like a switch being flipped. It went black. I came to in pieces. Not all at once, but in slow, confusing waves. First there was a sound. A low, persistent buzzing right next to my ear. Then a feeling. a vibration against my skull, and a coldness. A weird draft on my head where there should have been warmth. My body felt like it was filled with sand, heavy and useless. I tried to lift my head, but it was too much effort. Something was tickling my cheek. I managed to crack an eye open. The room was dark, but a sliver of light from the hallway cut across the pillow. And on the pillow I saw them. Clumps of my own dark hair. Thick locks scattered like dead leaves. A cold dread, sharper than any hangover, sliced through the alcoholic fog. I forced my arm to move, my hand clumsy and slow. I raised it to my head. Instead of hair, my fingers met the unfamiliar bristly sandpaper of a fresh buzz cut. My other eye opened. My face felt strange. Lighter. I brought my hand down and brushed my fingers over my right eye. Nothing. My eyebrow was gone. My stomach plummeted. The buzzing stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. Slowly, painfully, I pushed myself up on my elbows and looked toward the foot of the bed. A figure was standing there, a dark silhouette against the hallway light. He was holding the electric clippers, the metal head glinting. As my eyes adjusted, I saw his face. It was Gary. And he was smiling. A wide, proud, utterly insane smile. "See," he said, his voice calm and triumphant. "Now we're in this together. Solidarity." The world snapped into focus with a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. It burned away the hangover, the exhaustion, everything. I launched myself off the bed, a raw sound tearing from my throat, and slammed him against the wall. The clippers flew from his hand and clattered to the floor. "What the fuck did you do to me?" I screamed, my face inches from his. He didn't even flinch. He just kept that serene, self-satisfied smile. "I did what you were too chicken shit to do yourself, Brody. I made you a better friend. You assaulted me in my sleep." I shoved him again, his head thudding against the drywall. "It's just hair," he yelled back, his composure finally cracking. "My aunt is dying, and you were whining about your stupid hair. I fixed it for you." The door flew open. Mark stood there. His face, a mask of confusion, then horror. As he took in the scene, me shirtless and shaking with a half-shaved head and one missing eyebrow, the clumps of hair on the pillow, and Gary pinned against the wall looking like a deranged cult leader. "What the hell is going on?" Mark stammered. I let go of Gary and pointed a trembling finger at him. "He did this. While I was passed out." I turned to Mark, my voice breaking. "Call the cops!" Gary actually laughed. A short, incredulous bark. "The cops. For a haircut. Are you insane?" "Call them," I repeated to Mark, my eyes never leaving Gary's. Mark pulled out his phone and backed out of the room. I could hear his hushed, urgent voice in the hallway. Gary just shook his head, a look of profound disappointment on his face, as if Times was the one who had betrayed Times him, asterisk. "You're going to throw away our friendship over this?" he asked softly. "You're really going to bring the police into this?" "You threw away our friendship when you came into this room with a pair of clippers," I snarled. "You're not my friend. You're a psycho." The police arrived in less than 10 minutes. They separated us, took my statement, and looked at my head with a mixture of pity and disbelief. They found the clippers on the floor. Gary, with a calmness that chilled me to the bone, admitted everything. He told them he was just helping a friend see the bigger picture. They put him in handcuffs. The click of the metal snapping shut was one of the most satisfying sounds I'd ever heard. As they led him away, he looked back at me, his eyes full of righteous fury. "You'll regret this, Brody. I was trying to help you." The regret never came. But the harassment did. It started with phone calls from a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice shrill and accusing. "You need to drop these charges. My son is a good boy. You're ruining his life." It was Gary's mother. I hung up. She called back. I blocked the number. The next day, the text started from a different number. Pictures of Gary as a kid. Messages about how he was just trying to support his family, how I was a selfish, vindictive monster. Then a week after the assault, my doorbell buzzed insistently. I checked the peephole. It was her. Gary's mom, a thin woman with a pinched face and the same entitled fire in her eyes as her son. I didn't answer. She started banging on the door. "I know you're in there, Brody, you coward. Face me." I ignored her. Eventually, she left. The next day, I installed a small security camera over my door. It felt paranoid, but I had a feeling this wasn't over. I was right. She came back 2 days later. This time, she didn't buzz. She just waited. When I opened the door to leave for work, she was standing there practically vibrating with rage. "We need to talk," she hissed. "No, we don't." "Get off my property or I'm calling the police," I said, trying to close the door. She jammed her foot in the way. "You will not ruin my son. He was being a good friend. You're the selfish one." "He assaulted me," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Now move your foot." That's when she snapped. She lunged her purse, swinging like a medieval flail. It caught me square in the temple, the hard corner of a wallet or phone inside connecting with a sickening thud. Stars exploded behind my eyes, and I stumbled back into my apartment. She came after me, her nails raking down my cheek, drawing blood. "You'll drop the charges," she shrieked. "You'll tell them it was a misunderstanding." Adrenaline kicked in. I grabbed her wrists and shoved her back hard out into the hallway. "Get the hell away from me," I roared, slamming the door and locking it. My head was throbbing and I could feel warm blood trickling down my face. My hands were shaking. I leaned against the door for a moment, then walked over to my phone, opened the security app, and watched the recording. It was all there. Crystal clear video and audio of her ambush, the attack, the whole unhinged tirade. I smiled, tasting blood. Then I dialed 911 again. The legal system grinds slowly, but it grinds fine. Gary's case was first. Faced with undeniable evidence and his own bizarre confession, he pleaded guilty to assault to avoid a worse sentence. The judge read him the riot act about consent and bodily autonomy. He got 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a mandatory anger management course. The entire friend group cut him off completely. Last I heard, his parents sent him to live with some other relatives in another state, a fresh start he in no way deserved. His mother's case was more spectacular. My video was the star witness. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a distraught mother. Pushed to the edge, but the jury saw a violent, entitled woman attacking someone for daring to hold her son accountable. She was found guilty of assault and battery. She got 30 days in county jail, 2 years of probation after that, and was ordered to pay for my medical bills from the emergency room visit. But I wasn't done. I filed a civil suit against her. For the assault, the harassment, the emotional distress. My lawyer said we had a slam dunk case, and he was right. She settled out of court. The check that arrived a few weeks later was for $10,000. I held it in my hand, looking at the numbers. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about consequence. It was a tangible piece of justice. I used every penny of it for a down payment on a small house across town, far away from my old apartment and the ghosts of bad memories. I painted the walls, built a deck in the backyard, and watched my hair grow back slowly at first, then all at once. The missing eyebrow returned a little patchier than before, but it was mine. About a year later, I was at a hardware store trying to figure out which lawnmower to buy when a woman tapped me on the shoulder. "You look like you have no idea what you're doing," she said with a laugh. I turned. "Is it that obvious?" Completely, she said, her smile lighting up her whole face. I'm Sarah. My dad owned a landscaping business. Let me save you from that piece of junk. We talked for an hour. She helped me pick a mower, we got coffee, and by the time I left, I had her number. Life moves on. The hair grows back. And sometimes you find out that the best thing a toxic friend can do is show you exactly who they are. So you have every reason to slam the door shut and never look back.
Story 7. I'm sure you've already read his story. I'm the monster. The liar, the cheater, the woman with 2 lives who blew up his world. I've seen the comments. I know what you think of me. And I'm not here to say I didn't do it. I did. Every single thing he said I did is true. I just need you to understand why. People don't just wake up one morning and decide to be a terrible person. It's a slow process. You die a little bit every day until you'll do anything just to feel alive again. I was 17 when I got married. 17. I didn't even know what I wanted for dinner most nights, but I stood in a church and promised my entire life to someone. Before I had a chance to figure out who I was already wife. A year later, I was mother. My whole identity was gone before it ever formed. My own name started to sound weird in my head. It wasn't my name anymore. It was a label for the person who made lunches, did the laundry, and planned holidays. My dreams, the silly little ideas I had about what my life could be, got packed away in a box in the attic like old clothes I'd never fit into again. My husband isn't a bad man. He wasn't abusive or cruel. He was just the man in charge. He was the one who built the box I lived in. Our families knew each other forever. Our lives were so tangled together it was impossible to see where one ended and the other began. Leaving wasn't an option. How could I? I'd be destroying everything for our parents, for our friends, and most of all for our son. He deserved a happy family, a mom and a dad under one roof. I couldn't be the one who took that away from him. Then my husband had an affair. He calls it an emotional affair, but what does that even mean? He was giving a part of himself to someone else, a part that he hadn't given me in years. The nights he spent on his phone, smiling at the screen, left a cold spot in our bed that felt bigger than an ocean. That was it for me. Something inside me, something that had been asleep for a decade, just broke. But I still couldn't leave. I was a coward. So when a temporary work assignment came up, a 2-year post on the other side of the country, it felt like God was giving me a secret exit. It wasn't a job opportunity, it was a lifeboat. I told my husband it was for our finances, a chance to get ahead. He agreed. I packed my bags and I left Em behind in that quiet house with her duties and her broken heart. On the plane, I made a decision. I wasn't M anymore. I was A. A was a new person. A didn't have a husband or a son. A had no history she didn't want. A was finally just herself. And it was the most terrifying and incredible feeling I'd ever had. I never planned to meet him. There wasn't some grand plan to have an affair. I was just trying to breathe. But he was there at a work dinner a few weeks after I arrived. He was funny and smart, and when he looked at me, he actually saw times me. Not a wife, not a mother, just a woman. A. He asked me about my favorite movies, my thoughts on politics, my stupidest childhood memory. For the first time since I was a teenager, someone was interested in who I was, not what I did for other people. The lies came out so easily. I'm divorced. It felt true in a way. The M, who was married, felt like a different person. No kids. That one hurt. It felt like a betrayal to my son, but it was a necessary lie to keep this new world safe. Each lie was a brick I placed in the wall between my two lives. I was so careful to keep them separate. And for 2 years I was happy. Genuinely, truly happy. It was a stolen happiness, but it was mine. We built a life together. We adopted a dog. We spent weekends hiking and lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper in bed. I felt love for who I was, or at least for the person I desperately wanted to be. But the guilt was always there, eating away at me. Once a month I had to fly back. I told him it was a required work trip to the head office. I'd get on the plane as A and get off as M. The change was so jarring it felt like physical pain. I'd walk into my old house, and the smell of it, the sight of my son's toys on the floor would make my stomach twist into knots. I'd hug my son, and his pure, unconditional love felt like a hot poker against my skin. How could I do this to him? I'd sleep in the same bed as my husband, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's life. All that shame and guilt would curdle inside me. I couldn't let it out in M's world, so it would explode in A's. When I'd get back to him, I'd be a wreck. I'd pick fights over nothing. I'd get angry if he was 5 minutes late. I'd push him away, trying to make him hate me. I was screaming at him without words to just times leave me asterisk. I knew I was a bomb, and I was trying to get him out of the blast zone. I was trying to save him from me. But I was too weak, too selfish. I was addicted to feeling. Seen to feeling like A, and I couldn't bring myself to end it. Of course, it couldn't last. A house built on lies will always fall down. He started noticing things. A piece of mail that came with my real name on it. An old photo tag on social media from a family friend. He asked why he'd never met any of my friends from back home, why my divorce paperwork was so complicated I couldn't talk about it. Each question was a fresh wave of panic. I'd lie more, making up crazier stories, digging myself deeper and deeper. I kept telling myself that if he just knew the truth about how trapped I was, he'd understand. But that was a fantasy. I had lied about everything that mattered. The day he ended it, it felt like my whole world collapsed. He told me he knew. He didn't have all the details, but he knew I wasn't who I said I was. He was done with the secrets. Losing him was like losing the only part of myself that felt real, I begged. I cried. I sent him long, rambling texts trying to explain. I even posted an old picture of us online, a stupid, desperate move to remind him of what we had. It was ugly and pathetic. He blocked me everywhere. There was just silence. For a week, I lived in that silence floating through my empty apartment. The life I built as A was gone. And I knew it was only a matter of time before the life of M was gone too. I had given him all the power. He knew my real name. He knew the city I was from. It wouldn't be hard to find my husband. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would stop. I was just waiting for the explosion. This morning it came. Not as a loud bang, but as a quiet, simple text message on my screen. It was from my husband. It just said, "We need to talk." Now. I stared at the 3 words on my screen. We need to talk. It wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was worse. It was final. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone again to call him. I knew I couldn't do this over text. I owed him a voice, a face. I hit the video call button, my heart pounding in my throat like a trapped bird. He answered on the second ring. He was in his home office, the one I'd helped him paint a soft gray 3 years ago. His face was blank. There was no rage, no tears, just nothing. It was the face of a man looking at a stranger, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. "Hi," I whispered. My voice sounded thin and stupid. He didn't say hello back. He just held up his phone to the camera. On his screen was an email. I could see photos. A picture of me and him, the other him grinning on a hiking trail. A screenshot of a text where I said, "I love you." A picture of us with a dog we adopted together. Proof. An entire 2-year life condensed into a single neat package of betrayal delivered straight to my husband's inbox. "He sent this about an hour ago," my husband said, his voice flat. "He included your real name, my work email." He was very thorough. The air left my lungs. I opened my mouth to speak, but what could I say? The lies were all there in color. The first instinct, the stupid animal one, was to deny it, to say it was fake. But looking at his empty eyes, I knew it was useless. The game was over. I started and my voice broke. "I can explain." "Can you?" he asked, and it was a real question. There was no sarcasm in it. "Can you explain a he called you A? Is that what you called yourself?" I just nodded, tears starting to stream down my face. "It's not what you think," I said, the oldest, weakest excuse in the book. I tried to tell him everything. About feeling like a ghost in my own life. About being 17. About his emotional affair, feeling like the final nail in the coffin. I tried to explain that A wasn't about finding someone else, it was about finding myself. The words just sounded hollow and selfish as they came out of my mouth. I was trying to explain the color blue to a blind man. How could he possibly understand? He listened patiently. He didn't interrupt. When I was done a pathetic sobbing mess, there was a long silence. "So you built a new life," he finally said, his voice still terrifyingly calm. "You felt trapped, so you ran away and pretended none of this me, our son, existed. For 2 years. He shook his head slowly. "The affair, what I did, was wrong. It was a crack in the foundation. But you didn't try to fix it. You took a sledgehammer to the whole house, and then you went and built a new one somewhere else." "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "I am so sorry." "I know you are," he said. "You're sorry you got caught." And that was it. That was the truth. He saw right through me. I waited for him to yell, to scream, to tell me he was filing for divorce, that I should never see our son again. I braced for the explosion, but it never came. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, and his tone shifted. It became businesslike. "Your assignment is over. You're going to quit that job and you're coming home. This weekend." I was stunned. "What?" "We are not getting a divorce," he stated, like it wasn't up for discussion. "I am not going to be the one to tell our son that his mother and father are splitting up because she had a secret second family. I will not blow up his world because of what you did. I will not destroy our parents and our families with this. We built this life for 15 years. It's a mess, but I'm not lighting the match. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He wanted me to come home. We were going to stay together. A tiny, sick flicker of hope lit up inside me, and he must have seen it on my face because his expression hardened. "Don't misunderstand me," he said, his voice turning to ice. "This isn't forgiveness. I don't think I can ever forgive you. A is dead. That life you had is over. You're going to come back here, and you are going to be a mother to your son and a wife to me, at least on the outside. We will be civil, we will be parents. But us, what we were, that's gone. You killed it. This is a business arrangement now. The business of raising our child in a stable home. Do you understand?" I understood perfectly. This wasn't a second chance. It was a life sentence. The next few days were a blur. I packed up A's apartment, a place that had felt more like home than anywhere else on earth. Each thing I put in a box felt like a betrayal. The coffee mug he gave me. The stupid poster we bought at a street fair. I took the dog to a shelter, crying so hard in the car that I could barely see the road. I was erasing a person. I was erasing myself. Flying home was the opposite of my flight out 2 years ago. Then I was flying toward freedom. Now I was flying back to my prison. Life now is quiet. So quiet. We live in the same house, but we're a million miles apart. We don't fight. We don't argue. We barely speak unless it's about our son, what he needs for school, who is taking him to soccer practice. We sleep in the same bed, but we stay on our own sides, a giant freezing canyon between us. Sometimes at night I wake up and I can feel him staring at the ceiling, and I know he's thinking about it. About her. About A. He never brings it up. He never calls me a liar or a cheater. He just looks at me sometimes with those same empty eyes from the video call, and I know he sees it all. He doesn't see M, his wife. He sees the liar. He held up his end of the bargain. He told everyone my assignment ended early, and we were so happy to have me home. Our families were thrilled. Our son was ecstatic. On the outside, we are the perfect family. We go to barbecues, we host Christmas. We smile for pictures. It's all a perfect, beautiful lie. And me, I don't have A's freedom, and I don't have the simple, ignorant peace of the old M. I'm just trapped in the wreckage. I destroyed a good man's heart, the man I was cheating on and the man I was cheating with. I broke everything I touched. He was right. I am sorry. I got caught. But that's not the whole truth. The most twisted, horrible part of all of this is that deep down in a place I can never ever say out loud, I miss her. I miss A. Because she was the only one who ever got to be real.
Story 8. People see my son's life now, the big house in Europe, the money, and they hear his story. His version of it. They call my husband and me monsters. They say we abandoned him when he needed us most. But they don't know the truth. They don't understand what it means to build a family, not just with feelings, but with sweat and sense. I am his mother. I am the one who is ashamed, and it is time for my side to be heard. My husband and I are not flashy people. We worked good, steady jobs our entire lives. We saved. We planned. We had 2 sons to think about and our own old age. You don't get to be our age by throwing caution to the wind every time there's a crisis. You build a foundation brick by brick so the whole house doesn't collapse when a storm comes. We taught our boys this. We taught them that life is hard and you have to be practical. We didn't raise them to be emotional. We raised them to be survivors. Then my grandson, Nick, was born. His heart was broken from the very start. It was a terrible, terrible thing. My son's son was a mess. I understand that. He was a young father, scared out of his mind. But his fear made him blind. He found this surgery in another country that cost a fortune, an amount of money I couldn't even imagine. He came to us, his eyes wild, and asked us to give him everything we had. He saw our savings, the nest egg we had spent 30 years building, and thought it was his for the taking. He didn't think about his brother, whose future was also tied up in that money. He didn't think about us and what would happen to us if we were left with nothing in our old age. He only saw his own pain. We couldn't risk the entire family's security on what felt like a desperate gamble. His wife's parents, they were different. They were always more dramatic. They sold their apartment, their only home, for $35,000. It was a crazy, reckless thing to do, leaving their whole future up to fate. We talked about it, my husband and I, and we decided to do what was responsible. We gave him $100. It wasn't about the amount. It was a gesture. It was to say, we are with you, we are praying for you, but we cannot set our own house on fire to keep you warm. He saw it as an insult. We saw it as the only sane choice we could make. I know the years after were difficult for him. He talks about it now like we turned our backs on him, but we saw him becoming the man we raised him to be. He worked hard. He found a way. He succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. When we heard he'd become a millionaire, we were so proud. My husband and I looked at each other, and we thought, finally, he gets it. The family is strong. In our culture, that's how it works. A strong branch supports the whole tree. His success wasn't just his. It was the family's. It was meant to lift all of us up. But the success and that move to Europe, it changed him. He got lost in that Western way of thinking where everything is about the individual. What's in it for me? Family became a business to him. He paid back his in-laws for their reckless act. He bought them a huge house, sends them on expensive vacations. He treats it like he's settling a debt. He made his friend a partner in his company. Another debt to settle. But what about us, his parents? We weren't a debt to be paid. We were the ones who gave him life, who laid the foundation. He treats us like distant relatives. When we want to see our own son, our own grandchildren, we have to book our own flights. We have to pay for a hotel. His in-laws get a guest wing. We get a list of nearby accommodations. He says he learned a lesson from us. But the lesson he learned is wrong. He thinks love is something you can count, like money in a bank account. The real proof of what he'd become came 5 years ago. My other son, a good man with a good idea, wanted to start his own business. He needed a loan. For my son's son, the amount was nothing. A drop in the ocean. He could have written the check and not even noticed the money was gone. But he sat across from his own brother and told him it wasn't a good investment. He closed the door in his brother's face. He chose money over blood. But even that wasn't the worst of it. The moment that truly shattered my heart happened just a few months ago. My granddaughter, his niece, got into a car accident. She was driving drunk, I know it was. A stupid, childish mistake. But she's just a kid. She was hurt badly, and now she has scars on her face. She won't leave the house. She's ashamed. The surgery to fix it is cosmetic, yes, but it's not about vanity. It's about healing the wound inside her, the shame she feels every time she looks in the mirror. We asked son for help. This is his family. His niece. And do you know what this multimillionaire, this son of mine, said? He told his brother, my son, that if he wanted to pay for his daughter's surgery, he should consider downsizing his home. He told him to sell his house. The cruelty of it, the absolute coldness. To tell his own brother to give up his family's security, the very thing we taught them to protect. Above all else, for something he could pay for with the change in his pocket. That was the moment I knew I had lost him. He complains that we didn't sacrifice our future for him, and now he demands his own brother do just that, all while he lives in a palace. My husband and I talked late into the night for weeks. Crying. Wondering where we went wrong. How did our son become this cold, calculating stranger? We are the villains in his story, but we are the ones with broken hearts. And so we decided something. We can't let this be the end of our family. We can't let him erase us, his own parents, his own brother from his life. A letter came in the mail last week. It was an invitation printed on thick, expensive paper. It's for my grandson Nick's 18th birthday. A huge, lavish party at their estate in Europe. We would be delighted by your presence, it said. It felt like another test. Another way to make us pay our own way, to be reminded of how little we matter. But this time, we aren't just going to visit. We're going to do something more. My husband has a box in the attic. It's full of things from son's childhood, letters he wrote, pictures, things he's long forgotten. We're bringing it with us. And we bought one-way tickets. The flight over the ocean felt endless. My husband slept most of the way, his head resting against the cold window, but I couldn't close my eyes. I just stared out into the darkness, the heavy box of memories resting on my lap. Every photo, every clumsy drawing from kindergarten, every report card felt like a piece of evidence. This was the boy we raised. This was the son we knew. I had to believe that boy was still in there somewhere, buried under all that money and European strangeness. His house wasn't a house. It was a palace. A stone monstrosity with a garden so big you could get lost in it. A smiling woman, a housekeeper, I suppose, showed us to our room. And yes, it was a room in the main house this time, not a hotel. A small victory, I thought. A sign that maybe he wanted to fix things. But the room was cold and impersonal, like a guest room for strangers, which I suppose is what we are now. His in-laws were already there, laughing with my daughter-in-law in the kitchen, looking perfectly at home. They wore expensive clothes. They belonged. We just felt like old dusty relatives who had shown up unannounced. The party was obscene. Hundreds of people, all dressed in formal clothes, drinking champagne that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Music drifted from somewhere in the garden. And in the middle of it all was Nick, our grandson. 18 years old, healthy and strong. Looking at him so tall and confident, you would never know he was the baby who had started all of this. For a moment, my heart ached with pride. This was the success. This was what it was all for. But then I saw my son's son moving through the crowd. He was shaking hands, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a king in his own court, and we were just peasants begging for an audience. I couldn't take it anymore. I found my husband took his hand and walked over to our son. I asked if we could speak to him alone for a moment. He led us to his study. It was dark wood and leather with a wall of books he's probably never read. He stood by his big desk, not even offering us a seat. He just waited impatient. "What is it, Mother? It's Nick's party." I put the old cardboard box on his polished desk. "We brought this for you," I said, my voice trembling a little. "We wanted you to remember." He looked at the box, but didn't touch it. He knew what was inside. I remember everything he said, and his voice was so flat, so empty of feeling. "No, you don't," I pushed. "You don't remember being a boy who loved his family? You don't remember what we taught you. About duty. About how a family stands together. I remember you taught me that when times are hard, you make a practical choice," he said. "I remember you taught me the exact value of a son's—" The words hit me like a slap. My husband flinched beside me. "That is not fair," I cried, my voice finally breaking. "We did what we had to do. We had your brother to think of. We had our future. His in-laws, they gambled everything away, and you reward them for it. You buy them a house. You send them around the world, and us, your own mother and father, you make us pay for a hotel to see our own grandchildren. You turn your back on your brother when he needs a loan. You tell him to sell his home to fix his daughter's face, your own niece." I was sobbing now, the tears I'd held back for years finally coming. Your success was supposed to be the family's success, to lift us all up. Not to be used as a weapon against us. We are your parents. We gave you life. He just stood there watching me fall apart. There was no anger in his face, no pity, nothing. That was the worst part. It was like he was looking at a stranger. When I was finished, he took a breath. "You're right," he said quietly. "You did teach me a lesson. The most important one of my life. You and Dad taught me that love has a price tag. That family support is a transaction. You made your transaction. You paid $100 for your peace of mind. My in-laws made their transaction. They sold their home. My friend made his transaction. He worked for free for a year. I am simply settling my accounts." He finally looked at the box on his desk. He picked it up not with love, but like it was a piece of trash. "This," he said, holding it up, "is an attempt at another transaction. You're trying to trade old memories for a piece of my fortune. The answer is no. I've learned my lesson too well." He walked to the door and opened. "The party is still going on. A car will be ready to take you to the airport in the morning. I've booked you tickets home. First class, of course. Consider it a final payment." And that was it. He left us standing in his big, empty office. My husband put his arm around me and led me out. We didn't say goodbye to anyone. We just went to our cold guest room and packed our bags. The one-way tickets we'd bought felt like a joke. A stupid, hopeful dream from two old fools. We are home now. The first-class flight was just another insult, a way for him to show how easily he could have helped all these years. My other son picked us up from the airport. We had to tell him everything. The shame of it is a physical weight in my chest. We failed both our sons, but in such different ways. People will read my son's story and they will call me a villain. I suppose in his world I am. In his world of balance sheets and transactions, we made a bad investment. But in my world, the world where I grew up, you build a foundation for your family so it can withstand anything. He didn't just leave the foundation. He bulldozed it, built a palace on top, and left us outside the gates. He has his money, his success, his Western ideas. But he is alone. He has a business ledger where his heart should be. And I, his mother, am ashamed? Not of the $100. I am ashamed that I raised a son who has no soul. Story 9. My husband has left me. My own daughter won't speak to me. They're all over there at her house, probably talking about what a monster I am. And I know if you're reading this, you'll probably agree with them. But you don't know my girls. You don't know my family. I'm the one who built it. And I'm the only one who seems to remember that a family is supposed to take care of its own. I have 2 daughters, and they couldn't be more different. My eldest, the one who is causing all this trouble, has always been the strong one. She's like a tank. Whatever she wants, she gets. A good husband, a nice house, a career she could just drop without a second thought. And kids. My God, the kids. 4 of them. She just pops them out one after the other like it's nothing. She makes it all look so easy, and I think she's forgotten that for some people it's not. My youngest, my baby, is different. She has a softer heart. The world bruises her more easily. She's had to fight for everything, for her grades in school, for jobs, for relationships. I've always had to watch over her, to be her shield. It's a mother's job to see where things aren't fair and to try and make them right. And life has never been fair to my youngest. The day she called me about the doctor's appointment was the worst day of my life. I heard a sound on the phone I hadn't heard since she was a little girl who'd fallen off her bike. That raw, hopeless sob. The doctor had told her it was over. She was infertile. The word itself is ugly. Final. All her dreams of a family, of a baby to hold, just gone. It felt like a part of me had been declared barren, too. I looked at my life, at my two girls, and all I could see was this terrible imbalance. One daughter's house was so full of life it was bursting, while my other daughter was facing a future that was just empty. A quiet house. A lonely life. It was wrong. A cosmic mistake. And I knew right then that it was my job to fix it. The solution was right there inside our own family. It was so simple, so perfect. My eldest, for all her faults, is a wonderful mother. Pregnancy suits her. She glows. It's a gift, a talent her body has. So I helped my youngest find the words. I coached her. This wasn't some huge, awful thing to ask. It wasn't like asking for a lung. It was asking her to use her gift, the one she had in abundance, to help her own sister, to give her a chance at the happiness that came so easily to her. We knew she'd had a difficult time with her last baby. Honestly, it sounded like a lot of drama to me. She complained about bed rest and high blood pressure, but at the end of the day, she was fine and the baby was fine. That's what matters. The past is the past. A few uncomfortable months in exchange for a lifetime of joy for her sister. It seemed like such a small price to pay. Her no was like a door slamming in our faces. It was so fast, so cold. There was no hesitation. She didn't even pretend to think about it. She started talking about risks, about her health, about how she needed to be there for the 4 children she already had, as if we were asking her to sacrifice herself. It's just a pregnancy. Her body is literally built for it. I could hear my youngest's breath catch on the phone, her hope just shattering. The pain twisted into anger. Of course, she screamed at her. She was wounded. But my eldest, sitting there in her perfect house with her perfect family, couldn't see past her own selfishness. She was hoarding her good fortune, keeping it all for herself. So my youngest posted on Facebook. I know people will judge her for that, but they don't understand. It wasn't an attack. It was a cry for help. A desperate plea from a woman whose heart had just been broken by the one person in the world who could fix it. She wanted the family to see what was happening, to understand her pain. She felt alone and she reached out. And what did my perfect, strong eldest daughter do? She responded with her own post. But hers wasn't a cry of pain. It was a weapon. She laid out all these private medical details, twisting the story to make herself look like a fragile victim, and her sister like some kind of monster for even asking. She hid behind doctor's orders to justify her selfishness, and she did it in public. She invited strangers into our family's most private moments, just so she could get a few hundred likes and have everyone tell her how right she was. It was cruel, and it was designed to humiliate her sister. I knew I had to step in. I called her and asked her to lunch. Just us. Mother and daughter. This needed to be handled inside the family, not on the internet. When we sat down, I tried to make her understand. I brought her into this world. Her body, her health, it's not just hers. It's part of the family I built. Her first duty is to that family, to her blood. She didn't get it. She started talking about the risks again, about how her kids could be left without a mother. It was such melodrama. I finally had to be blunt. They will live, I told her. Children are strong. They adapt. They would have their father, their aunt, their grandparents. But your sister, the pain of not having a child, is a hole that never ever gets filled. You are asking her to suffer for a lifetime, so you can avoid a little risk and a few months of being uncomfortable. She just stared at me, her face pale. Then she stood up, threw her napkin on the table, and walked out without another word, like a teenager throwing a tantrum. I sat there alone in the restaurant, just shaking my head. She didn't understand her duty. She didn't understand love. That evening, the silence in our house was heavier than I'd ever known it to be. My husband, her father, came home late. I knew he'd spoken to her. I could see it on his face, that hard, disappointed look he gets when he thinks he's right about something. He didn't even ask about my day. He just stood in the living room doorway, arms crossed, and said, "You need to stop this." Just like that. Stop this. As if I were a child playing a game. As if the gaping wound in our family was something I had created instead of something I was desperately trying to heal. I was just trying to talk to her, I said, keeping my voice even. I was trying to make her see her sister's pain by telling her that her own children would be fine without her, he shot back. His voice was rising. What in God's name is wrong with you? Did you even hear what you just said? Of course I heard it. It was a hard truth, but it was the truth. Children are survivors. My eldest daughter's children have a father, a big house, money, everything they could ever need. They would be sad, of course, but they would be okay. My youngest daughter has a hole in her life that can never be filled. How could he not see the difference? You've never understood, I told him, and my own voice started to shake. You see everything in black and white. Right and wrong. You don't understand the bond between them, the connection a mother has. I am trying to keep this family whole. And all you can do is take her side. Her side, he laughed a bitter, ugly sound. She's not asking for a side. She's asking to be allowed to live her life. The doctors told her it was dangerous. This isn't a game. You are pushing her to risk her life because you've decided her sister deserves a baby more. He stepped closer, his face all tight with anger. You've always done this, coddled the youngest. She's your golden child, and you'll burn down everything around her just to make sure she's happy. Golden child. That's what he called my poor broken girl. The one who has struggled for everything while her sister sailed through life. It was so unfair, so cruel. I was not coddling our most wounded child. I was trying to save her. You're a monster, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. That word again. The word they were all probably using at my daughter's house. You're acting like a monster. That broke me. For 40 years, this man had been my partner. He'd seen me raise our girls, bandage their knees, sit through their school plays, hold them when their hearts were broken, and now he stood in our living room and called me a monster. All because I was trying to do what a mother does, fix things for her children. Get out, I whispered back. I didn't even know I was going to say it until it was out. He just stared at me for a long moment. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, turned around, and went upstairs. I heard the closet door open. I heard a suitcase zip shut. He walked back down the stairs, bag in hand, and didn't even look at me as he went to the door. "I'm going to my daughter's," he said, his hand on the knob. "The one who needs her father right now." And then he was gone. He left our home, our marriage, to go comfort the daughter who already has everything, leaving me all alone to pick up the pieces with the daughter who has nothing. The days since then have been the longest of my life. The house is empty. My youngest calls me a dozen times a day, crying. She feels so alone, so attacked. I'm the only one she has left. I try to be strong for her, to tell her that we'll get through this, but my own heart feels like it's been ripped out. My husband is still there. My eldest daughter posts pictures on Facebook. Pictures of him playing with his grandchildren. Pictures of them all having a family dinner, smiling. They look so happy, like a perfect little family that has cut out the sickness. They've made me the sickness. They're all huddled together in their fortress of righteousness, pointing their fingers at me. The manipulative mother. The monster. But they don't see what I see. I see one daughter blessed with so much she can't even see how rich she is, and another daughter starving for just a small piece of that happiness. I see a family with a cure for its own illness right inside of it, but one member is selfishly hoarding the medicine. They say I'm the one who divided this family, but I was the only one brave enough to try and make it whole. I was the only one who saw the imbalance and tried to fix it. They can call me a villain. They can post their happy pictures and pretend I don't exist. But a mother knows. A family is a body, and when one part is sick, the other parts have to help it heal. That's not monstrous. That's love. It's a fierce, painful, difficult love that people like my husband and my eldest daughter are too weak to understand. And I will stand by my youngest daughter, my baby, until the very end, because that is my duty. That is my love.
Story Teen.
I am the wife who cheated. I know what you're probably thinking, and you're not wrong. I broke our vows. I broke his heart. I'm the villain in the story he tells everyone, and honestly, I get it. But you've only heard his side. You've only seen the black and white picture he painted, where he's the perfect, unsuspecting victim, and I'm the monster who blew up our lives for no reason. It's a much easier story to tell than the truth. The truth is, our marriage died a long time before I ever even had lunch with another man. It died quietly in a house that was always clean, with bills that were always paid on time. We met when we were 16. It was the kind of story people love to hear. High school sweethearts. We grew up together, went to the same state college, got married at 25. We were that couple. The one everyone pointed to as proof that true love was real. On the outside, we were a perfect museum piece, a beautiful exhibit of a relationship that had lasted over a decade. Everyone admired it, but they only saw it from behind the glass. Inside, It was suffocating. We weren't a team anymore. We were just two people who had known each other for a long time. The conversations became routines. How was your day? Fine. What do you want for dinner? I don't care. He stopped looking at me like he saw times me asterisk. He just saw the wife, the other half of the perfect picture. I wasn't a person with changing thoughts and fears and dreams. I was a permanent fixture in his life, and he stopped tending to it. Then, about 2 years ago, my life imploded. My mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. It was devastating. My family was a mess, and I was trying to hold everyone together while falling apart myself. I needed my husband. I needed a partner to lean on, to cry with, to tell me it would be okay even if we both knew it wouldn't. He was there physically. He would put his arm around me at family dinners and say all the right supportive husband things. But when we got home, he was a ghost. I'd be crying in the kitchen, and he'd walk in, see me, and just start making a sandwich as if nothing was wrong. He'd ask if I remembered to take out the recycling. He was a curator, not a husband. His only job was to make sure the exhibit looked perfect, polishing the glass while I was screaming on the inside. I felt so completely alone. I was drowning, and the person who was supposed to be my lifeguard was standing on the shore, calmly describing the water. That's when I met Alex at work. It wasn't some dramatic movie-like encounter. He was just a guy on my team. We started getting lunch. For the first time, I told someone what was happening with my mom, and they actually listened. He didn't offer empty solutions or change the subject. He just listened. He asked questions. He remembered details I told him weeks later. He saw me. Not the 16-year-old girl my husband was still married to in his head, but the tired, scared, 28-year-old woman I had become. It felt like oxygen. The affair wasn't a plan. It was a slow slide into something I couldn't stop because it was the only thing that made me feel real. It started with talks, then texts, then drinks after work. And one day he kissed me and I didn't pull away. Because for the first time in years, I felt like someone had actually chosen me right here, right now. I know what everyone fixates on. That it happened in our house. In our bed. They see it as the ultimate act of disrespect, a desecration. But that house hadn't felt like a home for so long. It was a stage where we performed our roles as the perfect couple. Bringing him there wasn't about hurting my husband. It was a desperate attempt to feel something, to feel alive in a space where I had started to feel like a ghost. I told myself I could keep it separate. That this was a temporary lifeline I could hold on to until I learned how to breathe on my own again, and then I would let go and fix my real life. I know how stupid that sounds now. For a year, I lived two lives. The numb, quiet one at home, and the one with Alex, where I felt seen and heard. I was clinging to that connection with everything I had. Then one evening in September, it all came crashing down. He'd been quiet all day, a different kind of quiet. A cold, heavy silence. I was in the kitchen and he walked in and just stood there holding my phone. My heart dropped into my stomach. He didn't find it by accident. He had gone looking for it. He'd waited until I was in the shower, guessed my passcode, and read everything. He broke my trust to prove I had broken his. The confrontation wasn't a tearful, heartbroken mess. It was cold, calculated. His first words weren't, "How could you?" or "Why?" His first demand was, "You will cut off all contact with him." Now, it wasn't a plea from a man in pain. It was an order. He wanted to sever my only emotional lifeline and lock me back inside the glass case. I promised I would. I deleted Alex's number in front of him. I blocked him on everything I could think of. I promised it was over. And in that moment, I meant it. But the days that followed were worse than before. The ghost in my house was now a warden. He watched my every move. He'd casually ask to use my phone to look something up. He'd ask who I was texting. The silence was heavier, filled with suspicion. I felt like I was being suffocated all over again, but this time the walls were closing in. I was falling apart. He had taken away my only friend, the only person I felt I could talk to, and left me alone with my jailer. I just needed to know Alex was okay. I needed to explain. I told myself it wasn't about the affair anymore. It was about not being completely isolated. So I found him on Instagram. The messages were stupid, harmless. "Hey, are you okay? This is all a mess. I'm sorry." Nothing romantic, just connection. Just a whisper to the only person who I felt understood me. It's been about a month since he found out. We've been living like tense roommates, sleeping with a wall of pillows between us. Tonight we were watching TV. I got up to get a glass of water, leaving my phone on the coffee table. It was a stupid, careless mistake. When I came back into the living room, he was holding it. His back was to me, but I could see the rigid set of his shoulders. He was scrolling slowly. Then he stopped. He tilted his head, and I knew what he was looking at. He was reading my messages with Alex. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding against my ribs. I couldn't breathe. He slowly turned around the screen of my phone, lighting up his face. He didn't look sad. He didn't even look angry. He just looked cold, victorious. He looked up at me, and his lips curled into a tiny, terrible smile. "I wasn't doing anything," I stammered the words, feeling thin and stupid in the silence of the room. "We were just talking." He didn't respond. He just slowly lowered the phone and held it out to me. The screen was still lit up with my open conversation. "It's funny," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "For a month I've been wondering if I was crazy. Wondering if I was the bad guy for checking your phone, for not trusting you. Thank you for clearing that up for me." That little smile was still on his face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who just won a game. He hadn't caught his cheating wife. He had caught an escapee. This was his proof, his victory. He finally had the moral high ground, clean and simple. "It wasn't like that," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "He was my friend. You made me cut off my only friend, and I was so alone. I just wanted to see if he was okay." "Your friend," he let out a short, sharp laugh that had no humor in it. "The one you were screwing in our bed, that friend?" Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. He wasn't heartbroken. He was prosecuting me. He didn't want to understand why I was drowning. He just wanted to make sure I knew it was all my fault. I looked at the man I had spent my entire adult life with, and I didn't see a husband. I saw a stranger who had been waiting for me to fail. The ultimatum came next, just as I knew it would. But it wasn't about us anymore. "I'm done," he said, turning his back on me and walking towards the bedroom. "This is over. I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow." That was it. No yelling, no crying. Just a cold, clean execution. He wasn't trying to save us. He was cashing in his chips. The perfect victim narrative was now complete. He had given me a second chance, and I had thrown it away. Case closed. The days that followed were a blur of logistics. He moved into the guest room. We spoke only through clipped formal sentences about mail and bills. He filed for divorce exactly when he said he would. Our first meeting was with a mediator, a neutral woman in a gray pantsuit, who sat between us at a long polished table. The whole thing felt surreal. We were divvying up a life. Who gets the couch? Who gets the wedding china? We were dismantling the museum exhibit piece by piece. He was a different person in those meetings. Composed, reasonable, efficient. He never looked at me. He spoke to the mediator as if I wasn't even there. "We have agreed to sell the house and split the equity," he'd say, his voice flat. He was so good at playing the part. The wronged but dignified husband doing the right thing. Meanwhile, my world was burning down around me. The news traveled fast. His family, who had treated me like a daughter for over a decade, cut me off completely. Friends we'd had since college stopped returning my calls. They had heard his version, the simple, easy-to-digest story. She had a year-long affair. He found out he tried to forgive her, and she went right back to the other man. I was the monster. He was the saint. No one wanted to hear about the years of silence, about the emotional neglect, about the soul-crushing loneliness. No one wanted to hear that I was crying for help and the affair was the only way I knew how to scream. It's so much easier to have a clear hero and a clear villain. I made it easy for them to choose. Alex and I don't talk anymore. Once the divorce was filed, the reality of it all crashed down. What we had was a lifeline in a storm, not a foundation for a future. It was a symptom of my broken marriage, not a cure for it. He was a good person who got caught in my disaster, and it ended just like everything else. I'm completely on my own now. We sold the house last month. Walking through those empty rooms for the last time was strange. It didn't feel like I was losing a home. It felt like I was leaving a prison I had helped build. This was the stage where I had performed wifehood, where I had felt invisible, and where I had finally betrayed everything to feel alive. So here I am, 28 years old, living in a small apartment across town, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not one half of a couple. For the first time since I was 16, my identity isn't tied to his. It's terrifying. Most days I'm just sad. I mourn the boy I fell in love with and the man he never became for me. I mourn the future we were supposed to have. I carry the shame of what I did every single day. But some days in the quiet of my new apartment, I feel something else. It's a tiny spark of not happiness, but possibility. I can eat cereal for dinner and no one cares. I can watch whatever I want on TV. I can be messy. I can be selfish. I can just be times me times without worrying about how the exhibit looks from the outside. I know I broke our vows. I know I caused him a pain he never deserved, and I will live with that forever. I'm the villain of his story, and I have to accept that. But I'm not a monster. I was just a woman who was so desperate to be seen that I set my own life on fire just to feel the warmth.
Story 11.
I know my ex-husband Alex is telling everyone I'm crazy. I'm sure he's having a field day with this, painting me as the jealous ex-wife who can't handle his new happy life. And maybe some of it looks that way from the outside. But nobody knows what I know. Nobody understands that I wasn't being jealous. I was being a mother. It's been 3 years since the divorce. 3 years of being a visitor in my own children's lives. Alex has primary custody of our 2 boys who are 6 and 4. I get them on weekends when I can. He makes it sound like I'm a flaky part-time mom always canceling for work. He has no idea what it's like to be the one who had to start over from scratch, to claw my way up in a demanding job, just to afford a tiny apartment for my sons to visit. He stayed in our house with our memories and just slotted someone new into my place. Her name is Chloe. She's 26. When Alex told me she was moving in, he said she was a natural with the boys and that she handles 50% of the child care. He said it like it was a good thing. Practical solution. To me, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. 50%. She gets to be 50% of their mother. She gets the scraped knees on a Tuesday, the bedtime stories on a Wednesday, the pancake breakfasts on a Thursday. I get scheduled weekends and the feeling that I'm slowly being erased from their lives. When I pick them up, they're always talking about her. Chloe took us to the park. Chloe made dinosaur nuggets. I smile and I nod and I tell them how fun that sounds, but inside I feel like I'm crumbling. I love my sons more than anything in this world, and I'm losing them to a stranger. For months I've had this feeling, this deep, cold knot in my stomach, that something wasn't right. It was all too perfect. Alex happy? The boys happy? The new fiancé perfect. It just felt wrong. Like a movie set where if you peeked behind a wall, you'd see it was all just painted cardboard. Last Thursday, that feeling got so much worse. I went to their house to pick them up for my weekend. Alex was on a work call in his home office and just waved me in without even getting up. Chloe was the one who answered the door. She was acting weird, kind of twitchy, and avoiding my eyes. She said she was cleaning the downstairs bathroom and asked if I could use the one upstairs. I just said sure and headed up, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Why was she so nervous? I walked into the master bathroom, our old bathroom, and the silence was deafening. I wasn't planning on snooping. I swear I wasn't. But something took over. It was that feeling, that mother's instinct screaming at me that something important was being kept from me. My hand was shaking as I reached out and opened the medicine cabinet. And there they were. Tucked behind some allergy medicine were 2 orange prescription bottles, both with her name on them. I didn't recognize the names of the medications, but they sounded serious. Clinical. Terrifying. My heart started pounding in my ears. This was it. This was the thing that was wrong. I knew it. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling, and took a quick, blurry picture of each label. I shut the cabinet, flushed the toilet for show, and went back downstairs to get my kids, my mind racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. The whole drive to my apartment, I felt sick. Later that night, after I'd tucked the boys into bed, I finally pulled out my phone and zoomed in on the pictures. I typed the first drug name into Google. My blood went cold. Antipsychotic. I clicked on the link. It was used to treat schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, psychosis. It talked about side effects, about managing violent episodes and delusions. I looked up the second one. It was another similar drug sometimes used for severe treatment-resistant depression. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone on the floor. This woman, this 26-year-old girl, who was 50% of their caregiver, was on heavy-duty psychiatric medication for conditions that could make her unstable, dangerous. And my ex-husband, the man I had trusted with my children's lives, never said a single word. He let her move in, let her be alone with them, let her put them to bed at night, all while keeping this massive critical secret from me. Any trust I had left for him completely evaporated in that moment. My weekend was a write-off. I told Alex I had to cut it short because of a big project at work. It was a lie. The real project was me trying not to completely fall apart. How was I supposed to play at the park and read bedtime stories when all I could picture were worst-case scenarios? I was consumed with a terror so deep it made me nauseous. I had to get them back there, but I couldn't just hand them over without some kind of protection. I felt totally powerless. Before I drove them back, I knew I had to do something. It was clumsy, I know it was, but I was desperate. I sat my 6-year-old down on my bed. Honey, I started trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mommy needs to tell you something very important, and it's our secret. Chloe, she has a sickness in her brain. Sometimes it can make people act different, or a little crazy. I need you to be very careful. If she ever says something or does something that scares you even a little bit, you have to tell me right away. Okay, you promise. He just nodded, his eyes wide. I felt awful, but I also felt like I was giving him the only armor I could. I was arming him with awareness because his father refused to. I dropped them off on Saturday evening, gave Alex the fake work excuse, and fled before I could start screaming at him. I spent all of Sunday just staring at my phone, my stomach in knots. I knew my son. He's not good at keeping secrets from his dad. I was just waiting. Waiting for the fallout. Just after dinner, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with his name. Alex. I took a deep breath and answered. I didn't even get to say hello. What the hell did you say to our son? Alex's voice was a low growl, the kind he used when he was trying to control a rage. My own anger flared up hot and immediate. I told him the truth. The truth you've been hiding from me. The truth? You went into my bathroom, you snooped through my fiancé's private medical information, and you terrified our 6-year-old. That's your version of the truth. She's on antipsychotics, Alex. I was yelling now, standing up from my couch and pacing the small living room. Do you have any idea how serious that is? You have a woman on heavy-duty psychiatric drugs watching our children? And you didn't think I had a right to know? He actually laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Oh, I see. So you played Dr. Googled something you don't understand and decided she's a danger. This has nothing to do with you being jealous, right? Nothing to do with you trying to find a way to hurt her. The accusation felt like a slap. Jealous, Alex. This is about my children's safety. What if she has an episode? What if she gets violent? The things those drugs are for. Schizophrenia, psychosis. My God, are you even listening to yourself? I'm listening to you sound completely unhinged, he shot back. She sees a doctor. She's stable. She's an amazing person who loves our sons. And you, in one afternoon, try to poison our child against her because you can't stand that I've moved on. Every word was a twisting knife. He wasn't listening. He wasn't even considering my fear. He was just defending her, protecting her. He had already chosen his new family over the mother of his children. I felt a wave of despair so strong it almost buckled my knees. He was making me out to be the crazy one when her medicine cabinet was literally filled with proof that she was the one with the problem. You are so blinded by her you can't see anything else, I whispered. My voice thick with tears I refused to let fall. No, you're the one who's blind, he said, his voice dropping again, full of disgust. You're so wrapped up in your own bitterness, you're willing to hurt our son to get at me. Don't ever do something like that again. Then his tone shifted, becoming cold and practical. And by the way, you took Leo's bag with all his daycare clothes. I need it back tomorrow. Something inside me just broke. The bag of clothes. It was such a small, stupid thing, but in that moment it felt like everything. It felt like him stripping away the last little pieces of my role as their mother. He was already replacing me with her for the day-to-day care, and now he was demanding back the supplies as if I was just an incompetent babysitter who'd forgotten to return the diaper bag. It was another piece of my old life, my old family being packed up and handed over to the new and improved model. You want the clothes, I screamed into the phone, the rage finally boiling over. Fine, I'll burn them. I'll set the whole bag on fire so you and your perfect new girlfriend can go buy him a whole new wardrobe for your perfect new life. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. Then, with a chilling finality, Alex said, You've lost your mind! He hung up. The click of the disconnected call echoed in the silent apartment. I stood there, phone in my hand, shaking from head to toe. Tears were streaming down my face, now hot and angry. He thought I was crazy. He was siding with a woman he barely knew over me, the mother of his sons. He was gaslighting me, turning my genuine, terrified concern into a jealous tantrum. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't listen to his accusations. I couldn't listen to him defend her. My thumb hovered over his contact information. I felt a sick mix of pain and relief as I pressed the button. Block! The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the silence of a disconnected call. It was the silence of a severed connection. A door I had slammed shut myself. I sank onto my couch, curled into a ball, and just sobbed. I felt utterly and completely alone. But as the hours passed and the crying subsided, something else took its place. A cold, hard resolve. He wasn't going to protect them. He was too deep in it, too in love. Or too stupid to see the risk right in front of his face. He called my fear jealousy. He called my warning an attack. He didn't see me as a concerned co-parent. He saw me as a problem to be managed. Well, I'm done being managed. I'm their mother. That title doesn't disappear just because he found a younger replacement. My maternal instinct isn't a form of insanity. It's the only thing that's seeing this situation clearly. He might have primary custody, but I have the primary responsibility to protect them from threats he refuses to see. He thinks I've lost my mind. He has no idea how far a mother will go when she believes her children are in danger. He thinks this is over. This is just the beginning.